All right, we're going to try this again. It is Tuesday night in East Lansing, Michigan. My name is Jim Comparoni, publisher, SpartanMag.com. We had the show going on earlier and had some technical problems. Now we're getting ready to get Ron Armstrong back on with us. I know it's late for him. I want to get him back on as soon as I can. Anyway, hey, come on in, gather around. It is Tuesday night in East Lansing, Michigan. My name is Jim Comparoni, publisher, SpartanMag.com. We're going to be talking Michigan State versus Ohio State. We already started the show earlier, but I went and deleted it, had to start over again. We're getting ready to talk with Ron Armstrong about Michigan State against the Buckeyes coming up. Monumental
Call
game.
From
Big move.
to accept, press 1. To send a voicemail.
All right, Ron Armstrong, we got it rolling again. Now, ready to get it going again. I apologize to everybody listening, everybody that got bumped out. They're gathering back in now. Ron, I appreciate and I apologize to you also because I know it's getting late, and we appreciate your time and your insight and your expertise, and I appreciate your friendship as well. Ron, Big Movie Armstrong,
Hey, no.
a card-carrying Spartan dog, Michigan State Spartans, early 90s. Ron, welcome to Spartan Mag Live.
Hey, glad to be back connected. Let's get into it.
Let me
Big one this weekend.
Let me pass it off to the gallery here. Make sure that they can hear you before we go any further.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Well, I put a question out there right now. It usually takes about 45 second delay for it to go out there.
Okay, fantastic.
But we'll just pause here. Got a lot of questions. I'll just go ahead and do the intro. Like I said earlier, I was telling these people, hey, Michigan State, big weekend for the Spartans, obviously. And going back to August, July, you never would have thought that the Michigan State Spartans would be number 7 in the country, 9-1, going to Ohio State, going to the Horseshoe, going to Columbus, with Michigan State versus Ohio State being the number 1 college football game of the weekend in the country. Second time this year, Michigan State has been a part of the biggest college football game of the weekend in the country. Happened when they played Michigan a few weeks ago. Now they go to Ohio State. Nobody's given Michigan State much of a chance to win, but Michigan State has done it before to the Buckeyes that way. Did it in 1972, 1974, 1998. And then in 2013, 2015, Ohio State should not have been surprised by that one. Michigan State, physical good back then. Michigan State, a little different brand these days. Still looking to be physical. But it's been a joy to watch them and the progress they've made. And I was saying before the Michigan game, it was already a great season because of the entertainment that they had done and the college football season that they have given to the program and to themselves. And in the meantime, to us, giving us an amazing college football season to watch. And they're not done yet, like Mel Tucker was saying in the locker room after that game, after they beat Maryland. Not done yet. And we'll all be watching that one against Ohio State. Ron Armstrong, you already talked about it earlier, but I'm going to ask you to repeat some of your thoughts from a few minutes ago. Michigan State versus Ohio State. What are your initial macro thoughts on this one?
Look, I don't think it'll come as a surprise that it's an enormous challenge. It's a loaded team offensively. And you talked about, the teams that, were able to, pull an upset or go down there and get a W. One thing those teams, for the most part that I can remember, they had either a great defense or they had some top-tier defensive guys that could take over ball games.
Yeah.
But, and we talked about this, new college football, there's not a whole lot of shutdown defenses.
Mm-hmm.
College football, and to a greater extent, football in general, has become an offensive game.
Mm-hmm.
And to that end, we have a team that's kind of built for new college football. You're not going to shut folks down. It's getting key stops. And I guess the big thing is, can we get enough key stops, get them off the field, force field goals, to stay in it. And I talked about it before. Top-tier defensive guys that can take over ball games like Purdue did and like we did in 2017. Give ourselves a chance, stay in the fight, and in deep waters, if you will, and see where we're at in the fourth quarter. And when you're the road team, that fan, if the longer you're in the game, the more game pressure is on the home team, and that fan base down in Columbus, they can get antsy. And especially, with our history of, going down there and ruining their season or springing an upset, they will feel game pressure the longer we're in that. So I think that's the goal. If it were me, I would try to take my chance, try to, mix it up, not be too careless with my blitzing and just try to stay in there, stay in the fight as long as possible. and see where we're at in the fourth quarter.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the blitzing. You mentioned the Purdue game. Paul and I talked about this on the VCast today outside of the Perlis Plaza. Some SpartanMag.com subscribers may have seen that over at SpartanMag.com already. And by the way, if you're not familiar with SpartanMag.com, get over there, check it out, become a subscriber. We'd love to have you as a subscriber. If you thought about it, now's the time. Good time to join. In the meantime, give us a thumbs up here on the channel and at the YouTube channel, and also give us a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel, and we would really appreciate that. But a point I was making today about Purdue, a lot of Michigan State fans may not have seen the Purdue-Ohio State game because that game was taking place, I think, concurrently with the Michigan State-Maryland game. I think they're playing at the same time. And, people may have seen the score, and Ohio State jumped out to a 35-7 lead, but Purdue was moving the ball against them. They didn't move the ball on their first drive. I think it was 7-0 Ohio State, and then Purdue went 3-and-out, which you can't do. I mean, you got to get some first downs and punt it back to them and make them go 90 yards. Going 3-and-out, that's not like Purdue. It happened, and I think at that time Ohio State went up 14-0. Then Purdue went and drove like they did against Michigan State, doing a lot of the similar things. Looked real good. Touchdown, 14-7. Then I think Ohio State. By the way, when Purdue went 3-and-out, they shanked a 12-yard punt and gave Ohio State like a 35-yard field. 35 yards, touchdown, 14-0. And then Purdue's 14-7. Then Purdue, I think, drove midfield. I can't remember, but Ohio State scored 21-7. And then Purdue fumbled the kickoff. And, they gave them a 12-yard field, touchdown, 28-7, 35-7. And, I forgot. Okay, 3-and-out, shake a punt. Then Purdue goes and scores. Then Purdue gets to do it about the 50-yard line. That's what they're doing. They were driving again to about the 50-yard line, cross midfield, 45-yard line. Looked like they're going to go tie it up 14-14. And Brom takes O'Connell out of the game. They put Plummer, the backup quarterback, in because they use more than one quarterback. I don't know why they feel the need to do that. Plummer comes in there. They run a zone read option, fumble it. The quarterback leaves it in the gut of the running back. Running back thinks he's supposed to not take the handoff. Fumble. Next play, Henderson for Ohio State, 67 yards. Gap error, Purdue, touchdown, 21-7. I mean, it was looking like that was going to be 14-14, and they just fumble it. You cannot fumble it against Ohio State. You cannot shank a punt. You cannot fumble a kickoff. Those three things, 21 points, it's 35-7. And Purdue was moving the ball. It was 35-7 because Ohio State is so explosive, and you can't make mistakes against them. But Purdue was doing some good things. Like Ron said, you can't hand it to them like Michigan State did in 2017 or like Purdue did last week. Ohio State does not need any help. Michigan State needs to play relatively mistake-free. Impossible to be completely mistake-free, but one way Michigan State has gotten to 9-1, Ron, I think you would agree, is that Michigan State has limited those critical errors. I mean, they've not been perfect. They have more penalties than anyone in the Big Ten, but they've not made those critical errors. They have not beaten themselves. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, and that's one of the things when you're grading the film, you look at, your critical errors and mental errors, and those are the things you try to coach against, because those are the things that'll get you beat. That, the other team, they didn't have to do anything to beat you. You hand it to them, and like you said, Ohio State's good enough. They won't need our help. So, you got to do your best to, clean that stuff up and just, make them earn it. If they make a play because you were there and the guy's just better, then you tip your cap to them. But, you can't have any gap errors and blown coverages and misassignments because they are going to make you pay. And it could be 6 quick, and you can look up and it's 21-0. It's, 9 minutes left in the first quarter. Mm-hmm. So, but at the same time, because they have that ability, they can get careless sometimes because they feel like at any time they can explode on you. So they can be careless. Mm-hmm. So, I think if you can be patient, you can stay in it. They'll make some mistakes because they're that confident, and with good reason. There's a whole lot of talent on that offense. And I was sitting there looking at Ohio State, watching film, and in a lot of ways, they're a 93 octane version of our offense.
Okay.
I mean, if you look at the similarities in what they have, I mean, Garrett Wilson is a version of Reed, vastly better. Their version of Naylor, if you will, a little bit better. Then you have JSN or whatever. They're kind of their Mosley in the middle guy. Only one I'd say right now. I take Kenneth Walker over their running back, but I mean that's not. Mm-hmm. then you have Stroud, who's probably a little bit more advanced version of Thorne. I mean, it's just the bigger gap is that offensive line. Yeah. That's a big athletic group, and we're not there. But if you look at their skilled guys, there's not a big gap between our skilled guys and their skilled guys. The gap is up front. That offensive line is massive,
and they're athletic, and they, against and
they're
that
athletic,
whole
and
line,
they get their hands on you.
And that entire line, if you're just watching Ohio State jerseys against the opponent jerseys, they move the whole thing back. And everybody remembers how good Nebraska's defensive line was, the way they could two-gap and so forth. In that first half, Ohio State, it was a 5-man road grader clearing space for that running back. They did it against Purdue also. That offensive line, I was saying in the VCast today, I think it's Ohio State's best line since the 2014 Ezekiel Elliott team. I don't know, Ohio State fans that follow it more closely might disagree with me on that, but offensive line's the real deal. So they get the run game going, and they give time to Stroud, C.J. Stroud, and he's finding receivers that run great routes, and they are great at run after the catch, and the tight end is good. I think he has more touchdown catches than any tight end in Ohio State history. So he's back there behind that offensive line. With all that talent around, they don't need any extra help. It's just it's a difficult outfit to try to slow down. And the Henderson fast running back, that 65-yard touchdown against Purdue, just a little gap error. 43, the inside linebacker didn't get over there. A little bit of daylight, gone, 63 yards. And Smith Enigma, that Enigma, I call him Enigma. It's Smith Enigma. Excellent. The ability for him to accelerate. He had a 75-yarder against Nebraska. I think Nebraska just cut it to 10-3, kicked off, first and 10, 25-yard line. Just a simple little hitch. Little 7-yard hitch from the slot, catches it, turns, and just makes a guy miss and just accelerates down the sideline. He was one of the top 30 recruits in the country coming out of high school, I think, from Texas. These 3 receivers, 2 are from Texas, 1's from California. Olave's from California. When Urban Meyer went national to recruit, he wasn't kidding around, and these 3 receivers are some of the fruit from those efforts. These guys are special at wide receiver.
They're pros. But here's the thing. That's the one thing that our kids, look, we're banged up in the back, and our DBs are banged up. But they do have the benefit of going against our receivers every day in practice. So they won't be surprised with how good Ohio State's receivers are. They played against good receivers. The issue is going to be up front, and I think that the front 7, our front 7, well, front 6, with our four down linemen, our 2 backers.
Yeah.
If they can positively impact the game, we can hang around, because those back 5 guys are going to be under siege all day.
Yes.
And it's going to take a big time effort, and just stay in the fight. I mean, I know I keep saying that, but that's really what you have to do when you just have so many individual matchups that are tilted against you. And that's what really good teams do. Like, if you just look at the collective, we're 9-1, they're 9-1, but what'll happen on game day is they'll figure out how to isolate individual matchups that they could just win. And we don't have enough of those that we can win, and that's where you'll get into trouble. So we got to try to, disguise our coverages better, and hopefully put some balls on the ground. Football is a crazy game. It doesn't always go how it's supposed to, and there's going to be some opportunities. You have an opportunity to pick the ball off. It can't just be a pass breakup. You got to get the pick.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the things that how do you pull an upset? When the opportunity presents itself, you got to take advantage of it. And there's going to be some opportunities, and also you're going to have to play through some adversity. And I think, the Michigan game showed that we can do that, but the task is a lot taller this weekend in Columbus.
And, in order to beat Michigan, I've said this before, and maybe it wasn't the case this year, but it's been the case in the past. Sometimes you need players to play like you don't know they can. All right? And Michigan State's run game, I mean, they put up big yards against some teams. But in some ways, the run blocking was outstanding in that game. Maybe some guys rose up, maybe to stop the run a little bit better than they had all year. Can they do that again? Can they dip into the well and play against Ohio State like we don't know they can? 1998, everybody knew Plaxico Burress was good. Everybody knew Bill Burke was pretty good. But those two hooked up on that day like we had never seen them do before. I understand this is a different team, different decade, and everything else. Can Michigan State dip into it and go to the well another time and play as physical as they did earlier in the year, which is hard to do as the season goes along. Can they answer the bell this way? What do you think's in their hearts? I know they want to do it, but what are your thoughts about that? I know that's a crazy, vague, intangible.
This late in the season, if you think you're going to go out and just play a real physical, smash mouth game this late in the season, I don't know if there's enough left in the tank. I don't know if the legs are there. I think this is one of those games you have to just be dialed in mentally.
Because I noticed that the hitting,
your assignment.
Michigan State is hitting here and there still as much as they can, but it's not quite like it was in early October. Would you agree?
I think this is yeah, absolutely. You're not as fresh. Your shoulders are banged up. Your forearms are banged up. It just hurts to hit people. So, and that's fine. You can still win games without hitting if you're good at tackling. And I think this is going to be more of a tackling game. Okay. If the first guy gets the guy on the ground, we need that. We don't necessarily need big hits and we get a big hit on first down and it's 2nd and 8. It was a big hit, great. But then the next play you go for the big hit and he's out to shoot. It's a touchdown. That didn't help us any. So what I'd rather see is guys are just sounding their tackling and getting there, forming guys up and getting them on the ground and getting in the huddle. If you talked about it earlier, you said Ohio State they're great with run after the catch.
Yeah.
Well, just make that 17-yard, dig route 17 yards and get back in the huddle. So I think that's more important on a weekend like we're the team we're facing is just get in the huddle, get them on the ground and get in the huddle. We don't need any kill shots, and if a big hit presents itself, great. But I'd rather see guys focusing on proper technique, leveraging the football, and getting folks on the ground and getting in the huddle.
Sure. Nebraska did a pretty good job against Ohio State, held them to 26 points. Nebraska also threw for 248 against Ohio State. Some of Ohio State's weakness is their defense to an extent. Excellent individual talent on that team, but they've kind of reshuffled the deck a little bit there, fired their defensive coordinator after the second game. But Nebraska 26-17. When I looked at Nebraska and some of the ways that they kind of kept a lid on things, and Stroud I think threw for 400 against Nebraska like he throws against everybody. But Nebraska's linebackers are really good in pass defense, really good in pass coverage. They got an interception down to the red zone against Stroud. I think Ohio State's only thrown, very few interceptions. He's only been sacked 5 or 6 times all year. But the linebackers matching up with people, recognizing routes and carrying people through, and just made it just that level of senior expertise at the linebacker position, I thought was some of the secret sauce that enabled Nebraska to hang in there a little bit in that game. Michigan State's linebackers, still a work in progress. Noah Harvey got the start last week. We don't know about Quavaris Crouch, if he's going to be out there. Darius Snow as a nickel continues to play really well, hitting real hard. But Michigan State's pass defense last week, giving up yardage to Maryland, a lot of it was within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. They weren't really victimizing any corners or safeties. I've got the numbers here somewhere, but you might be interested to hear this if I find it. I think here it is. This is from Pro Football Focus. Tagovailoa was 29 of 48. 22 of his completions were within 9 yards of the line of scrimmage. 8 of them were completed behind the line of scrimmage, the screens and so forth. When he threw 10 to 19 yards downfield, he was 4 out of 8. And 194 of his yards out of those 22 completions were within 9 yards of the line of scrimmage. So people talk about Michigan State's pass defense and they want to blame corners, but Ronald Williams played pretty well in that game. And Marquis Lowry, a guy that has not played a lot, he's had some injuries, lower body injuries. He came up with some physical sweep tackles. So that guy's feeling okay from the waist up in terms of hitting people. Lowry played pretty good. Kimbrough was okay. I think Lowry played more snaps than Kimbrough, but Ronald Williams, good pass breakup on 4th down. The corners were pretty good. So I think they should be feeling a little bit better than they saw about themselves than they did coming out of that Purdue game. The DBs themselves, not bad. Now they're going to see these receivers that are outstanding. But your thoughts on that, the underneath coverages, the linebacker coverage, what are your thoughts about that in Michigan State?
If you look at Ohio State, they do a lot of that. Let me back up. When you're talking about Ohio State against Nebraska and you look at Penn State, I think any stats you're going to bring up about that offense, if you don't note that Garrett Wilson didn't play,
Yeah.
That's a totally different offense with him on the field. I mean, you think Reed is feeling the impact of not having Naylor out there. I mean, Garrett Wilson makes it so that you got, you're basically got four guys that can beat you at any time in the pass offense, plus the running back. So that offense changes a big deal and a great deal when he's not out there. But that being said, expect him to play this week, and they do a ton of stuff where they're not necessarily throwing the ball 40 yards down the field. They're getting it out and they're getting it in the hands of their playmakers. And again, it's one missed tackle, and those dudes are out to shoot. So, you're gonna have to tackle, and you're gonna have to run to the football and tackle. And I know it sounds really simple, but when you're playing against guys that are that explosive, that's really what it's going to come down to, because they're going to get open and they're going to make plays. The key is to try to limit those plays and make them have to run. And anytime you have to snap the football again, there's an opportunity for something bad to happen. So that's got to be the focus.
Sure. And I thought it was interesting that Michigan State blitzed more against Maryland, did not blitz much against Purdue. They can hurt you. I mean, they tried and they got beat on that screen. But against Maryland, Michigan State blitzed more, 42% of their snaps, and backed it up with a lot of zone. There's a lot of zone blitzes and zone pressures, sometimes cover four with a five-man rush, which, can give you a little more of open windows underneath for the offense. But Michigan State running some blitzes without going out on thin ice with man-to-man. Sometimes they did man-to-man a little bit, but Michigan State, I thought, did a pretty good job with the pressures in this game, especially on third down. Third down defense improved against Maryland. Now Michigan State's got that in the tank. They can feel good about that. Ohio State sees it on film. They will be anticipating some third down zone blitzes. Michigan State with Scotty Hazelton, his main thing over the years has been trying to disguise things and bringing different types of exotics and especially in the red zone, which has been successful. But your thoughts on Michigan State, would you agree that they had a measure of success with some blitz pressure packages against Maryland? And that's another thing. Even though they gave up 350 yards passing, they can feel good about some of the pressures they had on third down and people remaining on the same page and some of those pressures getting to the quarterback, which is different against Ohio State getting to that quarterback. But some baby steps for this pass defense, would you agree?
Yeah, for sure. I think anytime you can get the quarterback off his spot and affect timing with your blitz packages, you got to feel better, especially going and coming off a game where you gave up 500 plus yards passing, and then you get into the Maryland game. And I didn't think that Maryland's pass offense ever really felt like they were in sync. I think we had them off balance. If I were a betting man, I would guess, be willing to bet that Maryland didn't rep a whole lot all week. Expecting to see blitz packages. I would bet that they had film and they were practicing against some three bail and some cover six and stuff like that. I don't think they really expected to see very many zone fires and Mike fires, so they didn't look prepared for it. They didn't adjust well. Now that's on film now, so the element of surprise is gone. With third down blitzes, and you better believe Ohio State will have some of those crossers and blitz beaters built in.
Yeah.
Some screen plays, tight end screens, and stuff like that. So again, you just got to guess right. If you're going to blitz that team, you're going to have to guess right. And one of the things I think, if we're going to blitz, our D-line, our linebackers have to do a better job of feeling that it's a screen. If you haven't been able to get there with pressure all day, and then suddenly you're not getting any kind of resistance, that should be a tell that it's a screen or something, because I saw too many times where it was a screen and these guys are screaming upfield like they're Lawrence Taylor, and then the screen's out to shoot. So I think we have to be a little bit better in our recognition of screen plays on those blitz calls. But at some point we're going to have to take some risk, and live with the results, because I don't think we can play 60 snaps of zone and allow them to just throw 12, 13-yard passes all day. So we're going to have to take our shots. But one thing about playing Ohio State, and this is one thing that we'll have going for us, they won't change up a whole lot of what they do.
Yeah.
They won't do that. They're just believe they're good enough in what they do that's going to beat you. So it won't be a whole lot of surprises. They won't change a ton of their looks on offense or defense. They're just going to go out there and try to beat you with talent. So I don't expect to be surprised. I don't expect our offensive line or D lines or anybody to be caught off guard by what they do. They just believe that their guys are better than yours and the plays are going to work.
Right, and that includes defense also. You know, they had so many problems earlier in the year with Kerry Combs, their defensive coordinator. Now they're kind of splitting it up with some other people, and they've gone to less man-to-man. They were burned by man-to-man by Oregon, and also had trouble with some simple outside zone plays against Oregon. That's a long time ago, but they've had some changeovers since then. More zone now, but in the changeovers, I'm still watching it and trying to study them and so forth. But from what I've seen, if they play man-to-man, they're showing you before snap, we're in man-to-man. They don't even care. And if it's zone,
some of their issues.
If it's zone, they're in zone. And they don't care. And if they're in zone, they're showing it. They're not trying to disguise anything. They're trying to get back on training wheels on defense. They've got excellent talent there, but they're not. From what I've seen on defense, they're not going to be doing a whole lot of rock and rolling their safeties at pre-snap, trying to disguise what they're going to do. They want to get all their own people on the same page. So that can as good as they are, and they've got some good pass rushers. They lead the Big Ten in sacks in terms of all games. Michigan State leads the Big Ten in sacks in conference games. But like you said, they'll just line up and play on defense. But for someone like Peyton Thorne, if he has time, that can work to his advantage. Now, Ohio State has played some good quarterbacks. O'Connell was one, and O'Connell moved the ball against them and put up some big numbers. Problem was they had that big hole to dig out of. Martinez had some moments. Clifford had some moments, but Clifford didn't have a run game. Now you got a guy like Thorne who's capable of attacking if you're showing what your defense is ahead of time, and he's got a run game. So that's kind of interesting for Ohio State. They've got some work to do to stop Michigan State as well, right?
Yeah. Look, if you just remove, the Akrons and the Rutgers and no disrespect to Maryland, those teams out of the equation, and you look at, Minnesota, Wisconsin, I think it was Minnesota, Penn State, Purdue, I'm forgetting one.
That Ohio State played?
Yeah, I'm forgetting one. But anyway, there were decent teams in the conference. They're giving up almost 29 points a game to those teams. So, when they played anyone with a pulse, they didn't shut them down.
Right.
And I mean even so, there's points to be had out there. They're going to give up points. It's not a shutdown defense. Mm-hmm. They're going to beat you. The counter to that is I think they're scored 49 on average against those teams. So, you're going to put up points. They just believe that they can score more than you. It's almost like the video game. A punt. If you punt, it's almost like you're down 7 points. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's going to be some plays to be made out there. That's not a defense that's going to go shut anybody down. They're and again, in a lot of ways they're like us. You're going to be able to move the ball, and they count on that you're going to make a mistake, and they'll be there to capitalize on it. It's strange. It's really strange how these teams mirror each other in so many ways. They may just be a more talented version, but that defense doesn't. And they don't have that Bosa, Chase Young pass rusher that could just take your offense apart. They do it by committee. Yeah, there's some good football players there, but it's not that first that top 5 pick that you got to every down slide your protection towards. Mm-hmm. It's more they just got some good guys that work hard and can win some matchups. Yeah. But that defense, there are plays to be had against that defense, though.
That gets to go into the mailbag here. Question number 4, Matt from Springfield, Illinois says, how does Jaden Reed match up against the Ohio State secondary? Will he be Thorne's go-to receiver, or will Thorne have to look elsewhere to make plays? And, to answer that question, I looked at, like Jahan Dotson had 11 catches for 127 against Ohio State. Maybe didn't get loose for the long one, but 11 catches, and Penn State stayed competitive on that one. The transfer for Nebraska got loose for a 75-yarder, which cut the lead to 17-10. I'll have to look for his totals for that game right now. But your thoughts on Jaden Reed and the connection that he has with Thorne and how that presents itself against Ohio State. Now, Ohio State, they will, they run a 4-2-5 basically. They'll run 4 down linemen with 2 linebackers. Then they've got a guy called the Bullet, which is Ronnie Hickman. He's kind of a slot guy, kind of a Darius Snow guy, like 212 pounds, something like that, very similar. And as you noted, like last year, they don't necessarily go 2 corners and 2 safeties. Last year, a lot of times they go 1 safety and 3 corners and just match up. They're like, okay, we're going to play man-to-man with 1 safety deep. We'll have the standard number in the box. We'll stop the run with the standard number, and we're just going to lock you up. They might have tried that earlier in the year, but they got out of it when Oregon beat them. Didn't quite have everything together. But Jaden Reed,
yeah, you don't
Thorne
see a ton of that 3 across. Yeah, you don't see a ton of that 3 across man look with the single high. They stopped doing that, and I'm
Oregon
the defensive guy. I never understood.
Oregon kind of ran
I
them.
never understood why they played that way anyway. I mean, it's just when you have really good talent, you can play zone and impact the team with, impact the offense with your front four and, run stuff down. So I just don't know why they played that way to begin with. It's tough to find three guys that can play man to man, for 60 snaps. So
especially
I don't understand why they played that way to begin.
Especially when you play Alabama, which is what they were trying to get to, right?
For sure, right. It's tough to play that way. So, a little bit of hubris on their part, but you live and learn. I think that back to that question about Reed, Reed's going to have some opportunities. I don't think there's a corner they have that's they don't. It would surprise me if they felt they could line up with any of their corners and play man and shut Reed down. I don't think you're going to expect to see that all day. I don't even expect them to double team them. I think they're just going to play it straight and as long as possible, because they didn't do that with Bell and they didn't do it with Dotson. So I don't think they're going to do it with Reed. They're just going to play what they play, and if you make enough plays, and they'll just tip the cap to you. Now they might throw, one or two curveballs here and there if they feel like they know per down a distance and film study a particular route is coming. They might have a cloud or a sky call or something like that, or a robber or somebody in the hole buzzing underneath. But that's more situational than snap for snap. I think Reed is going to have an opportunity to make some plays. Now the guy I think going into the game is going to have an opportunity to have a big day is Trey Mosley working inside routes between the hashes. I think there's some yards and some plays there that can supplement not throwing it as tight end as much. Mosley over the middle, there's some plays there.
As far as their pass rush goes, like you said, they don't have a Bosa, they don't have a Chase Young. Their most impressive guy that I've seen is number 9, Zach Harrison, 6'6", 272. He's made some plays here and there. They got a second-string defensive tackle, Williams, number 91, freshman. He's got 4 sacks, 6'3", 315, freshman. They got another freshman defensive end, Jack Sawyer. Sawyer is 6'4", 250, number 33, 3 sacks on the year, comes off the bench. He was the number 1 player in Ohio last year. These are freshmen. They're number 1 in the Big Ten in sacks, all games counted, not just conference games. Conference games, Michigan State leads in sacks. Ohio State leads the Big Ten in sacks. I count 19 different players with sacks for Ohio State. That gets back to what you're saying by committee. I mean, they are deep and talented, and they play guys, and they keep them fresh, and they go 100 miles an hour. And they substitute 1 5-star for a 4-star and a 4-star for a 5-star. They keep bringing them in, and those guys are competitive, and they make plays. Haskell Garrett is coming off the bench now. He was injured against Maryland earlier in the year. They expect maybe he'll be playing more in this game. He's an NFL player coming off the bench for them. So that defensive front for Ohio State, talented. What about Michigan State's offensive line going against them? And Michigan State's offensive line is still somewhat figuring themselves out as well, with Jarrett Horst being gone at left tackle, and some of the shuffling they did last week, which involved Spencer Brown coming in and doing some decent football. Your thoughts on offensive line versus that Ohio State front seven?
Well, this is one of those things where there's the good news, bad news. The good news is they don't do a whole lot of twists and stunts that'll confuse you. The bad news is they got a ton of guys that are good enough to line up in front of you and just beat you with ability. So, I think I'd rather see our offensive line go against guys that are going to be right in front of them, because if the guy's in front of you, you have a chance to get your hands on them. Kenneth Walker's good enough to make a play. You don't have to, wash the thing out for Kenneth Walker to make a play. What you can't give up is quick penetration or whiff on a block or have communication errors. So, and we've seen on, a few times where there's been a look that, our offensive line didn't necessarily make the right call or right adjustment. I don't think you'll see a ton of that. Ohio State doesn't move around a ton. They don't really do a whole lot of, TEs and stuff like that. They just line up in front of guys, and they will slant or pitch every now and then, but that's not what they do. They just line up and beat the guy in front of them. So, from that standpoint, our offensive line, they know what the job is. They know the assignment. The guy in front of you, it's what coaches call cat coverage. You got that cat, and let's go. Yeah.
All right, Penn State did a pretty good job against Ohio State. It was 30-24 late in the game. Ohio State kicked a field goal to make it 33-24 to be safe there. But Penn State kind of contained the run that day. Now, Henderson, the freshman tailback for Ohio State, got out for a 68-yarder, But on his other 27 carries throughout the night, Henderson for Ohio State averaged 3.1 per carry, which is not bad. It's not great, but they contained him. That's to your point a couple of weeks ago. When you look at rushing totals, Ohio State had a decent number against Penn State, but that 68-yarder, that kind of skews it a little bit. Down in and down out, Penn State contained the run, and Stroud had his good day. But that's a reason why Ohio State, quote unquote, only had 30 with a minute to go. If you can hold them to 30,
right. There's some other things There's some other things that'll happen with them. From time to time, Ryan Day has a tendency to forget that he has Henderson in the backfield and, will call 7, 8, 10 straight pass plays. Mm-hmm. So
they did that against Nebraska a little bit, right? Against Nebraska.
Yeah, they'll get pass happy. And, look, I get it. When you have that many weapons out there, it's easy to forget that sometimes, the easiest thing to do is turn around and hand it to 32 and, watch him do his thing. So, sometimes they'll help you out with the way they decide they want to play. But I'll say this: when they're focused and they're dialed in, they're as good as anybody in the country. The issue with them sometimes is that they just, in their mind, the game is won before it's kicked off, and that's how you end up with games whether it's a one-score game with Penn State with a minute left, mm-hmm. or Minnesota's able to run up and down the field with them. That they're not always dialed in mentally. Now, I don't know if that's going to be the case this weekend, but that's been their MO at times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Purdue's Aiden O'Connell threw for 390 yards. Penn State's Sean Clifford threw for 361, and Nebraska's Martinez was kind of banged up that day, but threw for 248. Thorne.
How many attempts did those guys get those numbers on?
Clifford was 35 out of 52. 35 out of 52. Let's see, Martinez got it right here, 16 out of 31. 16 out of 31 for 248. I don't have Purdue's. I can look that up right now. But Purdue, got behind.
If
Purdue,
Thorne's throwing the ball more than 30 times,
yeah,
that's not a good sign for us. I don't think we can win the game with Thorne throwing the ball more than 30. 35 is probably the top end, because that means that it kind of sounds like we're behind early, and it's pretty much taking Walker out of the game.
Mm-hmm. Kenneth Walker, we've not talked about him yet. What a great season he's had. What an entertaining person to watch, student athlete to watch. I love his personality too. Humble kid. He came here, wanting to try to do something, and man, it's exploded for him. And he's given great heart and great effort. Was outstanding last week against Maryland, playing hurt, playing tough, needed all those yards. Now he's got a chance. Everybody saw what his ailment was last weekend. It'll be a little bit better by Saturday probably, but that thing will be hurting again at some point. And Ohio State's going to be excited to take on the Heisman Trophy candidate, right? So, like you're saying, Ohio State's not going to be napping for this game. They'll be looking to stop that tailback. And, Purdue came in with all the passing yardage and what they did against Michigan State. Purdue ran the ball a little bit against Ohio State in the first half when they were trying to get things established, but then it got sideways with those turnovers and the bad punt. But Purdue ran the ball against these guys, Horvath and the other guy. They, just little like 8 and 9 yarders here and there. Now, Ohio State will probably play things straight up, like you're saying. They'll just do what they do, and we'll see what kind of version of Kenneth Walker he's going to be and what the offensive line's going to be. But your thoughts on Kenneth Walker? How fun it's been to watch him? What he did against Maryland? 4 straight games of over 140 yards rushing. Everybody agrees he's one of the top 3 Heisman Trophy candidates right now. Might be the leader. And he's going down to the horseshoe as an interesting side story. We're all going into that game as observers, knowing that it's kind of like boxing Mike Tyson in 1989. But there's a chance you walk out of that stadium with just an oh my gosh feeling about Michigan State football. It's possible. That's why they got to play it. And if it happens, number 9 is going to have something to do with that. And if it happens,
absolutely. Look,
go ahead.
That kid. I mean, just to real quick, I think we have 2 games, 3 games and count the bowl game to just enjoy that kid being in the Spartan uniform. Like, just take it all in and enjoy it, because you don't get these kind of special seasons, every year. I mean, so I think we've been fortunate that that kid came here and she's put on just an incredible year and will continue to do so, remainder of this schedule. But going into this Saturday, I mean, look, I'm sure he's, been getting treatment around the clock and getting that thing ready to go. And that kid's a gamer. And I think he came to Michigan State for these moments. He saw it in the Michigan game, and I'm sure he'll be revved up and ready to go this weekend against Ohio State. And I expect, there's going to be 3 or 4 plays that pop for something big because it was number 9 that had the ball. And that might be, the difference between us being in the game and not. But I feel confident that kid, the talent that he sees on the other side of the field won't be above him.
Right. You
know what I'm saying? Like, sure. He's the kind of guy that they get. So they won't wow him. It may, in fact, they might be wowed by like, wow, this guy's really that good. So I don't worry about 9. 9's one of those guys. You tell him what time the game is, and he'll do the rest.
All right.
So.
Yeah. All right. Question from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, JMA. He says, and we've already talked a little bit about this, but he asks, what are Ohio State's weak spot on defense or weak spots on defense? And have we seen anything from other teams that have been successful in rattling Stroud? I mean, Ohio State's only given up 5 sacks all year. I've heard some people, Matt McGloin, former quarterback at Penn State, who's an analyst for Big Ten radio on Sirius Satellite, talking about you can get Stroud rattled a little bit with some pressure. That's true of any quarterback. Getting pressure against that offensive line is the difficult part. But weak spots on defense, we've talked about that a little bit. And do you want to expand on that a little bit more?
I mean, I just think they're not a defense that's going to just win with high end talent this year. I mean, I think the difference between that defense and any defense we've played, they're not loaded with first rounders. There's some good college players who may ultimately end up being NFL guys, but right now they're good college players, and good college players can get beaten by other good college players. So, we have a chance to put up some points. And to date, like, when they've played, pretty good Big Ten teams, those teams put up points. So I don't anticipate us going out there getting steamrolled and shut down offensively. There are plays to be made out there. Their corners aren't locked down guys. They don't have the typical Ohio State edge rusher. So, it's a good defense, but it's not a defense is going to go out there and just take you apart and take you out of what you want to do.
Sure. And that Maryland game, what did you learn about Michigan State in that game?
I thought we were much better at our communication on the back end. I saw a couple of times where I thought maybe if we had a veteran secondary, we might have checked out of some stuff that, and sometimes compliment will happen is all week. You remember when Tressel used to call Max Buller the computer because he said Max would make a check to something that they'd done in week 1 and now it's week 8. They didn't even cover it all week, but he remembered it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it wasn't something. He just recognized it and got us out of a potentially bad call into something better. I thought there was a couple of times in the Maryland game where we may have been in a call, and I'll give you a perfect example that the we were playing 3 robber. And if you watch what X does on get to the linebacker depth. It looks like something that we probably could have checked a quarter, cover 4, cover 6 in and been safe. But just, that ownership of a defense comes with reps and being in it for years and, having that amount of knowledge of the concepts. But other than that, I thought we were better at just the basics. Guys being where they're supposed to be. And I thought we handled playing, it looked like our defense felt better with pressure and not having to, get back there and cover for 6 seconds or whatever. So I do like that we mixed it up and got him off his spots and impacted their timing. And one other thing, you can see we're much better with our defensive backs when Ronald Williams is playing corner. I mean, teams don't throw at him a lot, and it's for good reason. I mean, the guy's just usually in phase. And he's breaking on balls and getting past breakups. So we're much better. And I think Lowry.
Yeah.
And I said this, he just eats guys up at the top of their route. if you watch here at the top of the route, he's right in the hip pocket. He's in phase. Doesn't necessarily make a pass breakup, but he just has a good instinct about when guys are going to break off their route, and he's usually where he needs to be. So I thought our back seven played a better game, from an assignment standpoint. Like I thought the Purdue game was mainly just assignment errors, over and over, and some of that was communication with some signal changes. So I think they did a good job cleaning that up, and they're going to have to continue to do that, this weekend, because it's a tall task. And that pass off fit that we're going to see against Ohio State is, probably tops in the nation. So you got to be clean back there and got to make some plays.
Lowry, you've been liking him and his potential for a while. I saw it on Saturday. Some of those aggressive sweep tackles were impressive, coming in and playing with some physicality. And I was like, oh man, that guy, he's not here just to wear a uniform. Now, looking ahead, I mean, this is a big one this weekend, but Ronald Williams, I think, is coming back. I think he's got a chance to come back. I think that I suspect Mel Tucker is going to say, hey, man, let us work on you for another 12 months, and I'll get you in the league. I suspect Mel might tell him something like that, and he'll be truthful about it. I think Ronald Williams comes back. Lowry is a redshirt freshman, playing his first college football. Chester Kimbrough will be coming back, and Chuck Brantley is going to be a sophomore next year. That corner situation all of a sudden looks pretty good.
For the future. Look, I have no inside knowledge. I don't have any inside knowledge of this, but I don't know. Look, as much as I like Ronald Williams at corner, that's a big kid.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't surprise me if he ends up at deep safety.
Uh-huh.
And now you have somebody else playing corner, because, I mean, he's a big kid, and I think he could play, at 200 pounds and be a deep safety. And now you got a rangy safety that can cover, and now you could play that, that single high look. And now you got a guy that can cover ground, and he has ball skills that, track the football. It's something your defense is, now you have four guys out there that can cover.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't surprise me one bit if he's at deep safety next year. And that way you can get Chuck or Chaz or Lowry on the field at the same time.
That gets your best 11 on the field, as coaches like to say. I've not thought about that. That's a great point. That's a great point. And if you have him at safety, because Xavier Henderson's going to be moving on, if you have him at safety, you can, go into a look where you can press across the board and put a safety and press coverage in the slot and not blink. That gives you some of that flexibility that can be a strength. I like that. Angelo Gross has to continue to get comfortable. He's not comfortable yet. Missed a tackle last weekend, and going to need to make some tackles on this one, because Michigan State's going to play some man-to-man at some point, and they're going to be on thin ice when they do, because if Ohio State sees it and hits one of those crossers, the thing about it is the speed. Olave and Smith Enigma. I'm sorry, I'm pronouncing that incorrect. What are his initials? I don't want to get it wrong.
Njigba.
Jackson Smith.
Smith and
JSI. How do I call him JSI? Is that right, or is it an E?
JSN.
It's an N. That's JSN. Right. JSN. I'm going to call him that. Out of complete respect, I don't want to get it wrong. Xavier Henderson had an interesting quote today during interviews. He said, he's talking about their running back Henderson. He says he looks fast on film, but when you play him live, he says, I have a feeling he's going to look even faster. And sometimes it's like that. You'll see a guy, and then you get on the field with him, as you know, and they look even faster. And this guy, Olave and JSN can fly, but Olave on those, or even Wilson, your guy Wilson, on those mesh routes, those shallow crossers, when they get you in man-to-man like they did against Michigan last year and the year before. Not last year, because Michigan kind of chicken danced their way out of that one. That I won't ask you to comment on that. But anyway, when those guys catch it the yard after the catch, Xavier Henderson and Angelo Gross, as good of a tackler as he's been at some points in his career, chasing those guys down, there could be some wow moments. That adjustment of dealing with the speed of Ohio State, and that's where it can get away from you also in those Mike Tyson moments. As far as Kimbrough goes, go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's been a while since I've noticed one team have that many guys that can just outrun pursuit angles.
Yeah. And
if you watch Ohio State last week, man, they just ran through zones and pursuit angles like, it was Skelly. So yeah, man, I think but the fact that X is aware of that helps you out. Like, hey, these guys are really fast. And so you take that upfield angle, anticipating that the guy's really fast. And at least you got a chance. Now, if I'm playing Ohio State and I'm coaching DBs, there's one thing that as a coach, you hate to concede anything. But if I'm coaching these guys, there's a little nugget of information that I'm going to pass along. So don't be afraid to take a 15.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to take a 15.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a double move, you beat tackle the guy.
Uh-huh.
Don't be afraid to take a 15. We'll get in the huddle. It's not how we want to play, but 15 yards doesn't get you beat. Touchdowns do.
Mm-hmm.
And if you watch, there's times where I thought our guys could just go ahead and take the interference. I mean, because let's face it, college football, the interference rule is not a spot foul. It's 15 yards.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're beat on a double move, what's that?
It's worth it.
It's worth it. Take the 15, get in the huddle. So there's times where I saw, like, for example, the route against Maryland when they ran a little over route. He ran right past X. At that point where he's not throttling down, tackle the guy.
Yeah. Don't let him get to the seam.
So, yeah, listen, sometimes it's a smart play. And when you're playing these guys, you can't give up points. I mean, look, as long as they're not in the end zone, we still got a shot. They could fumble the next snap, go pick. You don't know. Take the 15 and get in the huddle. Obviously, that's not how we want to play because you can't keep giving up 15-yard penalties, but it's better than a touchdown.
All right. I talked about Piotrowski earlier when we went on the air and we deleted it, but one of the hidden plays in that game against Maryland was down 13, driving early in the second half. First and goal, the 2-yard line, and Piotrowski defeats a tight end, down block, and gets in the backfield for a tackle for loss. Xavier Henderson did a great job against Penny Boone. Penny Boone, the running back, was the lead blocker on that play. Henderson defeated that lead block, set the edge so that Piotrowski, after getting that penetration, could go ahead and finish the tackle. Now it's second and goal, the 4 or whatever it was. Second down, they throw an incompletion out of the back of the end zone. Third down, Michigan State came with that 0 blitz, wholesale blitz. Henderson, Noah Harvey all over the quarterback. He throws it away, flag, intentional grounding, backed it up 18 yards, missed a field goal. First and goal, the 2-yard line. Piotrowski, big play on that one. I don't know if you took another look at that, but he gave a little head and shoulder fake to beat that tight end. Tight end was coming down and try to deliver a down block on him, and Piotrowski faked into that. I think it was the C gap, and then beat him to the outside to gain penetration. We always see head and shoulder fakes in the pass rush. I'm not sure I've seen somebody defeat somebody with a head and shoulder fake in order to one gap and beat somebody inside. And I guess he knew he was going to jump to that D gap all along, but set him up with a head and shoulder fake. I don't know if he's freelancing or what, but Piotrowski made a big play there that was critical for Michigan State to protect that lead.
I've noticed, I would say a good 7 snaps of his that there's just something natural that he can do that just you don't know if I don't know if it's been. I would just think my guess is just a natural ability because I don't see anybody else doing it, so I don't know if it's being taught. But there's just a couple of things that just getting low, getting underneath the block, or being aggressive with his hands and taking an inside rip. There's just a couple of things I've noticed on plays where that kid just like, well, why isn't anybody else playing like that? But he just keeps coming up with plays. And I remember telling you when I saw him in the spring and I saw him in the summer, like, man, this kid 47. He's showing up. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. He's smaller than everybody else, but he just finds a way. Now, the one thing that will be interesting that those Ohio State tackles are massive guys, and they play big. Sometimes you see big football players out there and they don't play big. Well, when those guys are 6'7" and 6'8" and they're 330 plus, he's gonna have to win with quicks, and we'll see if he can get underneath them, but. I do like some of the things I saw, like that shoulder shimmy. Then he had some violent hands on the sack where he got into the chest of the tackle and then took it inside and collapsed the pocket. So I mean, he's made some plays, and we're going to need him on Saturday, that's for sure. But to your point, that was a huge play on that goal line stand. You said first and goal from the 2, and you move him back and you end up missing a field goal. I mean, that's how you win ball games.
Big play for Piotrowski. If I was going to do a hot 11 coming out of that game, I'd probably put him in there because he had that sack later like you're talking about. And without all that size, it's almost like perfect for him to play fewer than 20 snaps in a game. That might be his sweet spot, for right now at this stage of his career. And they're getting that out of him. And then Jordan came in with that sack later on in the game, which was outstanding. They needed all those plays because Maryland could get combustible on you at any moment. And Darius Snow continues to play well. It's really interesting. Michael Dowell was a good player to starter for a long time. Now Michael Dowell's basically not getting on the field. I don't know if maybe he was dinged up in practice also, or something. But Snow is taking over that job, and he just keeps getting better as well. Nice hitter and cerebral player out there. And Snow's going to be doing that for a long time as a Spartan.
As he gets more comfortable in the middle of the field and just, spatial awareness, I think he's going to just take off even further, because every time he just, I like how he fits guys up. He's real physical out there. He can run, and cover, the middle of the field. Just so as he gets more comfortable with the defense and awareness globally where his help is, he's just going to continue to get better. And there's no doubt in my mind he's a future All Big Ten player.
What do you think about Peyton Thorne on that flea flicker, the arm strength, thrown from the left hash? I figures about, I think it's 48 yards on the, in terms of the gridiron, but probably about 55, 58 yards in the air on a laser, on a line, which I didn't really realize the first time until I went back and looked at it. Actually, somebody on the SpartanMag.com mentioned it. Arm strength there. Brian Hoyer, for everything about Hoyer, Hoyer had strong arm that he would show once in a while, and that's one of the things that's allowed him to stay in the league in certain capacities. But Thorne showing some arm strength there. Did you agree with that?
That as the season's gone on, his ability to drive the ball deep has gotten better. I thought earlier in the year he was throwing the ball a little early, and so we weren't hitting on those deep balls where he was trying to get it out there early and guessing where the guy was going to be. But of late, he's just driving that thing, and when you're confident in that deep ball, and you don't have to guess and kind of hang it up there. That one was a confident big boy throw.
Yeah.
And that's good to see. I mean, and you're talking about a first year starter. That's one of those where when it came out of his hand, I'm sure he knew it was a touchdown.
Mm-hmm. Well designed too, with Montori Foster checking up to run block and then going past him. Nice moment for Foster too.
See that? Listen, that release, that stalk release,
stalk block.
I saw that. I probably saw that 200 times as a freshman on scout team. That was a Courtney Hawkins. I mean, that had Hawk written all over it.
Really?
Oh man, that was Courtney Hawkins.
You're talking about the days when you covered Courtney Hawkins in practice. What you're talking about?
Yeah, I'm talking about my scout. No. The days where I got abused by Courtney Hawkins.
Right.
Yeah, that was a Hawk, stalk release, where he just set him up, and that was definitely Coach Hawkins written all over it, man. That was a thing of beauty.
Turned him inside out, and Thorne. And Kenneth Walker should get a little bit of credit for those yards too, because there's a reason those guys are open on those flea flickers, and they'll run the flea flicker again this week. Konadike and I talked about it in the week yesterday.
You can run that. You can run that play 3 or 4 times a game and still work. Honestly, I think the national media is missing that story.
Yeah.
How often? Because Kenneth Walker is that much of a handful that we can still run a flea flicker and hit touchdowns off of it.
Mm-hmm. It's not a surprise play. It's in the script.
No,
they know it's coming. And like Jay Johnson,
at some point it's coming.
Yeah, Jay Johnson,
but you have to honor Kenneth Walker.
Yeah, you got to because you're sending extra helmets in there to try to stop him. Jay Johnson in the press conference today, Michigan State's offensive coordinator, says that they consider it not a trick play; it's just part of their play action package.
For sure,
it's a different way. It's a different way. It's a different way to fake a handoff. It's just a more elaborate fake handoff.
Just a longer fake handoff.
Yeah,
and you know what? Here's the thing, though.
It backs the defense
neat about it is the neat thing about it is we're not running the same. It's the same play but different action.
Different variations.
A couple of times it's been, it's not always the straight inside handoff. I remember we ran it against Nebraska and it looked like an outside zone.
Yeah.
Then it was a flea flicker.
Yeah.
So. It's not. It might look like. I mean, it's a flea flicker, but the fake is different. That's been different.
Yeah, different window dressing and so forth. And also, if your defense and it's coming, are you more liable to keep try to time it? Like, okay, we're gonna keep 2 safeties back now because flea flicker's coming, and that gives more yardage for Walker, or might give him a little more space to run the ball because they're worried about flea flicker.
Yeah, so you got to pick your poison. So now that's putting that defense in conflict. But, it would surprise. Here's the thing.
Yeah.
It would surprise me if that works against Ohio State. I don't think they're going to believe that they have to put an extra safety, in the box to stop us.
Right.
So this might be one of those games where you don't necessarily see the flea flicker unless if we see the flea flicker against Ohio State, that means Walker's had a great first quarter, first half. And now they're bringing an extra man in the box because they couldn't contain him with their base look.
Right. Have you seen the Purdue fake flea flicker where the running back turns and fakes a throw to the quarterback and turns around and keeps it?
No, I didn't see that.
I think they did it against Ohio State, but Purdue did it last year against somebody, like against Minnesota or something, for like a 40 or 50-yard gain. But
did you see the quad? Did you see the quad week? Did you see the quad week play I told you about? Purdue actually scored on it against Ohio State with that play.
Yes. Yeah, they flooded four. Was it to the short side as well? Four
to
formation.
The short side. I mean, that's a tough play to defend.
And those receivers, as they're getting vertical, they are like in line with each other. So if you're in zone, it's hard to declare who's outside and who's inside because they break it out kind of late. That's part of it also? And
one guy bubbles. One guy bubbles or he's going to bubble.
Yeah.
One runs a wheel, and the other two one runs like a bang eight, another one runs like he's going to run an over.
Yeah.
But it's tough to defend.
They couldn't get anybody over there. They couldn't identify who they had. Yeah, that was wide open, just like X's and O's. It's
so fast because it's to the boundary. Here's the magic in it. Because it's to the boundary, it's going to open up quickly. So whichever one you're going to guess wrong. I mean, to me the smart play is to let the bubble stay open because that's the least dangerous threat.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, but how do you tell the point man that you've been stressing all week, hey, guard the bubble, and this guy bubbles? All of a sudden, you got a weak side wheel, and an over and a bang eight behind it. I mean, that's you're talking about stressing the defense to the boundary. That's tough.
Purdue, man, they're pretty
good.
Like I said, pretty good with the chalk over there at Purdue.
Right, and because it's short side, it's quick, man. That thing opens up. I mean, the ball's coming out in probably 2.5 seconds.
Sure.
It's coming out.
Sure. Yeah, and Peyton Thorne, as far as Purdue goes, they're starting to put numbers up on everybody. I don't know who's still on their schedule. They still play Penn State. I think does Penn State go to Purdue this weekend? I remember when I left when I left Ross-Ade Stadium that day when Michigan State lost, I'm pretty sure that that was on the schedule as the next home game. Let me check that out right now. That could be. What's funny is anybody that's rushed 3 and dropped 8 has given Purdue trouble. And Ohio State did some of that.
When folks have tried to blitz, when you try to blitz because the ball's coming out too fast. I mean, you're not going to get there. All you're doing is opening the throwing lanes. When folks have dropped, rushed 3 and dropped 8, it slows them down.
Wisconsin did it. That's what Wisconsin did against Purdue.
And Minnesota did some of it too.
Yeah. I was wrong. Purdue plays at Northwestern this weekend, then Indiana. They're going to win 2 more games. I think that makes them 8-4. Excellent season for them.
8-4. Now, folks, look, I posted this on the board. Folks are talking about these coaching vacancies.
Yeah.
If I'm Purdue, I'm not feeling good about Brom.
They already paid him once when Louisville came after him. You think someone else could come after him again?
Yeah, you're 8-4 at Purdue with that passing offense. Yeah. I mean, there's in the amount of jobs that are going to be open.
Yeah.
I mean, there's somebody who's going to want to take a look. You know what I mean?
People that really know football, I think, can see that Purdue was pretty special this year with some coaching. He got the big contract after merely going like 7-6 a couple of years, and then had a couple of down years, including the COVID year. But this is his best year. This was better than his first 2 years. They got him the big contract. And you look at the X's and O's are great, but the evaluation for some of those receivers, the recruiting job for some of those receivers, and the route running of those receivers, those guys for Purdue, I mean, they run some tight routes, It's hard to cover that stuff. They put those little triangle concepts in there with the those 3-man combinations when they go empty to the 3 receiver side if you're going zone, and those things develop so quickly. It's just hard. And then that quarterback processes it so quickly. That was evaluation also to get that guy as a walk-on. What guy?
That ball's coming out.
He strikes me he strikes me as a Pac-12 type of guy. With the passing
that looks like some old Pac-12, where that kid's been throwing the ball around playing football. Remember back when when the Pac-12 quarterbacks were so far ahead because nobody else in the country was doing 7-on-7s and having these passing camps. That's what he looks like, because when his back foot hits the ground, he knows where the ball's going, and it's out.
Does he remind you? Does O'Connell remind you of Cooper Rush at all? The recruitments are similar. Nobody wanted him.
Right. No, because I don't. He reminds me. I'm trying to think who looks like a guy that would have played for BYU or something back in the day, just because the ball. I mean, he's so accurate. Yeah. Cooper Rush was a gamer, got better as more polished later in his career as a passer. But man, this O'Connell kid, you can tell that he has repped that offense just over and over and over. I mean, you could just see that they know their concepts. Mm-hmm. Like their sight adjustments. You try to blitz, they're all dialed in on sight adjustments. Nobody's running the wrong route. So it's a well-oiled machine. You could tell Brom just has drilled the heck out of that offense with those kids. But again, when you drop 8 and make them kind of have to run through traffic a little bit, it throws off a little bit of that timing. But they're gonna still chuck it 50 times. And
I was surprised Michigan State didn't drop 8. Michigan State dropped 9 a couple of times, but didn't really do the Wisconsin drop 8. Ohio State did it against them. Michigan State never.
Man, I would have loved to see us. Yeah. If you just go 35, sometimes if you've ever heard of 2-man, 25-man, 2-man, I would have liked to see those 5 across, 3 deep, and been real aggressive with our 5 across, try to disrupt timing.
Just to see if they just at that point try something else. Change for the sake of changing. Right. You can only have so many things but
to be honest with you, the only time most teams in comp, to be honest with you, most times the only time most teams see, drop 8 is prevent, is real passive. You rarely see an aggressive 35 scheme. You see big 8 when it's prevent, but you rarely see anybody playing 5 across, 3 deep, and be really aggressive in it.
Yeah.
I think a few years ago, West Virginia played that way, and I think they led the country in interceptions.
Yeah.
Because it's just a different way of playing football. You don't see a lot of it. Mm-hmm. And if you're running you're playing sticks coverage, or you're really aggressive with those 5, and it's disrupting timing. You got 3 guys back there sitting with their eyes on the quarterback, tracking the football.
Do you remember Tulsa when they played Michigan State 2 or 3 years ago?
I do.
They dropped 8 a lot. Remember, they were either going wholesale blitz or dropping 8. They either dropped 8 or blitzed everybody, and that was it.
They were really aggressive with their corners in that. So they dropped 8, but how they played it is their corners were playing like a catch man-ish. They weren't in man because they weren't chasing crossers.
Yeah.
But man, they were really aggressive.
They'd lock them up and then pass them off.
Absolutely. So you can play that way if you got deep help over the top, and that you're only really eliminating 2 or 3 routes, because if you're running any crossing routes, you're letting them go. So you can be really aggressive on any out routes, any hitches. If you're a corner, you're basically 3 or 4 routes that you have to cover, and you can be really aggressive covering those routes.
Before I let you go, in terms of Michigan State and what they can do on offense, Michigan State with Jaden Reed, 29-yard slot fade or slot flag, gave Michigan State a 13-0 lead.
Box fade, yeah.
29 yards, similar to the 4th down play that they ran against Michigan. Prior to the snap, Thorne kind of looks over there a little bit, looks the other way, tugs his sleeve, rubs the outside of his thigh. With those 2 guys, does that get into people's heads? Like, okay, these are the 2 guys that have known each other since middle school. Is he giving that guy a signal? Do they just see it? When I saw that play, I'm wondering if that's what was called, or if they saw the defense and he did a signal and they went right to it. They've kind of.
I think there's some of that. There's some of that what it may not necessarily be a signal that the play is going to be any different. It might be. We've talked about between the 2 of them. Hey, we're going to run it instead of running this. Wide, run it a little skinnier. It might be something that simple that those 2 guys know. If I do this, I want you to be a little skinnier on your release, or get a little wider in your release, or give me more room to drop that in. Those type of things is what you'll see when guys are on the same page. It won't necessarily be an audible to change the route. It'll just be how we're going to adjust the route based on the coverages I see. Like, hey, the safety might be a little wider than we saw on film, so you're going to have to stay below the hash. Things like that.
And, on that release move, there's not a nod to the post. It's not a stutter and go. There's not a double move. He just ran right by that guy. And he did the same thing with Michigan a little bit too. He must have deceptive acceleration coming through there on that.
I think he's sneaky fast. I really do, because I think if there's enough film on him to know that he's just running by guys. Now, I don't know if it shows up on film that that has that much top end speed.
All right, so Thorne-Reed, they got to have it this weekend. Kenneth Walker is going to be an interesting task. It'll be fun for Buckeye fans, maybe for a little while, and then maybe they might get a little sour. We'll have to wait and see. Michigan State's got a great chance got a great opportunity. All right, Tank Brown got on the field for about 19 plays. I saw him get some closing speed late in the game that flashed a little bit. Other than that, it just seemed like he's still trying to get his feet, and I think he had a procedure at some point. So, but encouraging that they're getting him into the play group a little bit now. And Spencer Brown, I thought Spencer Brown looked pretty good at right tackle. Played in the second quarter.
I thought Spencer Brown looked like a Big Ten offensive lineman.
Yeah, and
he's always had the body side, the body type for it. I didn't think it looked like he was too,
no,
that he wasn't ready to go.
Yeah,
and that's encouraging.
Yes.
Now I'll tell you what, I saw Brandon Wright turn the corner on a pass rush and he retraced his steps and almost get a sack.
Did you? Was that on?
I did.
Was that during the sack? Was that the one when Tank Brown made his play? That might have been on there.
No, it was fourth down. I think it was not fourth down. It was the last drive of Maryland, I think. And
yes.
Tua, whatever. Tag flushed. He flushed him up into the pocket and he retraced his steps and almost got a sack. Mm-hmm. It was nice. He got his hips low and was able to turn the corner and then retrace. It was pretty good for a guy learning how to rush the passer.
We're seeing some guys that are becoming the next man in. That was a mop-up situation, in September, early October. That would have been Michael Fletcher. For whatever reason, some other guys are passing him. I mean, maybe some guys have some injuries behind the scenes. We don't know. But competition continues in that second string throughout the fall, as it should. And that's not always the case for some of the Michigan State teams I've covered over the past. I'm sure they talked about competition, but it didn't seem that way. With these guys from week to week, you'll see somebody get a role on a particular week because he practiced well that week, and that's a healthy thing to have in your program, in my opinion. And they've got it right now.
That's how your practices are. You're getting guys to compete in practice. I mean, if you really truly want folks competing, practices have to matter. And there's a lot of football teams where practices don't matter once the season starts. You're just, you're locked in. If you're a third string guy, you're locked in unless somebody gets hurt. So if you really want guys, getting after it in practice, you're saying, well, your playing time is how you practice. You got to reward guys with playing time, and you're seeing that.
I'm going to go over some stats right now before I let you go. I've kept you too long anyway, but these are just Big Ten stats, and let me know if any of these catch your ear. These are team stats, Michigan State and Ohio State. These are Big Ten games only. Rush offense per carry. Number 1 in the Big Ten, Ohio State. Number 2 is Michigan State. All the stats here and there, well, those are the two best. Offensive yards per carry. Rush defense allowed per carry. Rushing defense allowed per carry. Ohio State's 3rd in the Big Ten. Michigan State's 4th. Michigan State's allowing 3.3 per carry. Ohio State's 3.1 per carry. So you have the two best on offense going against 2 of the 4 best on defense. Of course, the 2 best are Wisconsin and Iowa, but Ohio State and Michigan State are right there. So the run game is going to be very interesting with this matchup. Yards per pass attempt. And Hazelton talked about this a little bit today, and that's a stat that I've been talking about for a long time. Michigan State's down to number 9 in the Big Ten in yards allowed per pass attempt, but people want to talk about being number 130 dead last in pass defense, and they've had some problems, and they went even further south with problems against Michigan and Purdue. But at that time, Michigan State was, before the Michigan game, Michigan State was like number 6 in the Big Ten in yards allowed per pass attempt. Now they're number 9. Some people might be surprised that they're not 14. But yards allowed per pass attempt, Michigan State's 9, Ohio State's 8. They're both a little bit vulnerable there. Third down defense. Go ahead.
Well, here's the thing. When teams are throwing them off 50 times a game, they're going to throw for a lot of yards.
Yes.
That's just the reality of it. But if you like you said, if you break it down per attempt, you're not giving up a ton of big plays. It's just they're just throwing the ball a lot.
And I think that's a truer indicator. And if your yards per pass attempt are manageable, 9 is a little too low. But if you're like number 5 in the Big Ten at that, but you're like number 2 or 3 in the Big Ten in red zone touchdown percentage allowed, that's kind of where you need to be.
That's a good defense. You're going to win a lot of games.
Yes, as long as you don't turn it over.
That's new football. That's where you're going to win in new football. Like red zone. It's red zone, third down, efficiency, and yards per attempt, yards per play. Those are things, and obviously turnover margin. Time of possession is a stat that really doesn't matter anymore as much because there's so many big plays, RPO, up tempo, that I think that's an antiquated stat. But some of these things, getting off the field on third down, are you giving up big plays? Are you forcing turnovers? And are you good in the red zone? If you're that kind of defense, you can beat a lot of people playing that way.
And Michigan State's third down defense, they're not there yet. That's a weakness. Michigan State's number 12 in the Big Ten in third down defense. It was better last week against Maryland. They emphasized it, and they were better. And it was third down. Those are the times in which Michigan State brought those zone pressures, 5-man with a blitz behind it, with a zone behind it. And it was effective, especially in the first half. Got them a lead, and then they kind of hung on. Third down defense, Michigan State is number 12 in the Big Ten in third down conversion percentage, but Ohio State's 11. They're both kind of weak there. They're kind of weak in third down defense. And
look, I said it. I told you it's kind of surprising how many similarities there are with these teams.
Yeah,
I think Ohio State just does it with higher profile recruits. So, or folks feel better about it, but there are a lot of similarities. It's just they may be a higher octane version.
Sure. Third down offense, Michigan State number 6, which is pretty good, but they can be better considering, with that running attack and with the balance, they could and should be better than third down defense number 6 in the Big Ten, 37%. This is where Ohio State is ridiculous. They're first in the Big Ten third down offense, 53% conversions third down Ohio State, and they're doing it this year without the running quarterback. Stroud will run a little bit.
And I'm going to tell you the difference right there.
What's that?
That's the difference between the offensive lines.
Gotcha. Right.
That's the difference.
Scoring defense, Ohio State number 6 in the Big Ten, and Michigan State number 8. Similar. Ohio State's given up 20. Michigan State's given up 23.3 in conference games. Sacks allowed. Ohio State's only allowed 5 sacks in 7 Big Ten games. That's the offensive line also. Michigan State's 5th.
Yep.
Michigan State's not bad, 5th. They've allowed 13. But Ohio State, they do not give up the sack. And consequently, they don't turn it over a whole lot. They don't have to take chances.
Right.
They're never down by 10, facing 3rd and 13. That's when you turn it over. They never have that. But anyway, those are the stats, and I'll let you go, Ron. I really appreciate all your insight. I know I kept you up too late. I apologize. I know you're tired.
Hey, no worries, man.
I'll let you go right now. I'll talk to you later, or later in the week maybe. But you have a good, safe day tomorrow. And you'll
be getting some 4 a.m., 5 a.m. text messages when I popped on some film and saw something crazy.
Okay. That sounds really good.
All righty.
I really appreciate it. There he goes, Ron Armstrong. We love him. Big movie. There he goes. Take care. There he goes, Ron. We really like him and what he does here. Thanks for posting over here. We'll get to those in a minute. I've got some more stats for you also. Red zone defense. So Michigan State's defense has been a problem all along, right? But the red zone defense has been a strength for them. During one of the telecasts, it was mentioned that Michigan State's number 10 in the country in red zone defense. In Big Ten games, they're 4th in the Big Ten, which is pretty good. They're allowing, and when I say red zone defense, if you go to Big10.org or some of the stats, they got the stats all wrong. They count red zone defense as how often the opponent scores, and they include field goals. No, that's wrong. Take field goals out of it. It's touchdown percentage. Red zone touchdown percentage. When you penetrate the red zone inside the 25-yard line, how often do you allow those to become touchdowns? Michigan State's allowing those to become touchdowns 40% of the time. 13 touchdowns on 32 trips. They've forced 16 field goals. So the best is Penn State, 25%. Then Iowa. Then Illinois, surprisingly, is 38%. I was shocked to find that Ohio State ranks dead last in the Big Ten in touchdown percentage. They've allowed 13 touchdowns on 18 trips. 13 touchdowns on 18 trips. That's not a lot of trips. I mean, Michigan State's allowed 32 trips inside the red zone. Ohio State's only allowed 18. So the hard part is getting to the red zone against Ohio State. But once you get there, they're allowing 13 touchdowns on 18 trips. I'm wondering about that. I wanted to bring up that stat before Ron moved along. But what I'm thinking about there is, Ohio State has had the changeover in defensive coordinator, and they've worked on other things that they've been emphasizing to get their defense up to standard. I'm wondering if red zone defense is something they've not had a chance to emphasize yet because they're fixing the other things. But red zone defense, if Michigan State gets in the red zone and can capitalize and those numbers continue to hold up, Michigan State's red zone offense has been okay, could probably be better. But Ohio State dead last in red zone defense. Give me 10 seconds. I'll be back in 10 seconds. Played a little weak here in the studio. I had to do something. All right, here we go. Let's go over here to the chat areas and the comments. I appreciate all the interest we've had from people. Let's see here. Where is... I'll even do that. I'll open the phone lines if anyone wants to give a call. But right now, let's go over here to the chat area to see what we got. Well, I'll go all the way to the top. Let me go to the bottom real quick just to make sure there's no... That's where I usually check to make sure there's nothing wrong going on with the show. Looks like everything's okay. Don't have any trolls. Looks like everything's okay. All right, let me go back up to the top. We had Tim D was in here first, and Gordon Tonona, Nate Vanderkamp, Hayden Vischer, and YT Sparty. YT Sparty. He's wondering if plus 19 is a great bet. I don't know about that. I mean, Ohio State, it's strange. You could play the way they deliver TKOs. You could play well and lose 42-21, believe it or not. So got YT Sparty in the middle. Got Tim D running the point. Tonona and Vanderkamp out on the wings, and Hayden Vischer's a stretch four today. Gordon Tonona says, what's the status of Horst? I don't think Horst is going to be playing. They're moving on right now with our Curry at left tackle. And the big question there, you had Jarvis at right tackle and Buter starting at right guard. And then later in the game, actually second quarter, Spencer Brown came in and played tackle, which allowed Michigan State to move Kevin Jarvis back to guard. And that's something very interesting for Michigan State to evaluate for offensive linemen, because basically you're looking, what is better, having Buter at guard or Brown at tackle? That's the competition right there. Because if you have Buter in there, then Jarvis is at tackle. And you have Brown in there, then Jarvis moves to guard. And Jarvis is okay at tackle, but Brown might be better at tackle than Jarvis. Like Ron Armstrong said, he looked like a Big Ten tackle. And, Spencer Brown's been a guy that's had a good frame all along. And athleticism, straight line speed. I've watched him since high school, and the lateral movement has not always been great. But against Maryland, he's going against number 97, who's a pretty decent defensive end. And his lateral movement was good. And he's a big guy, swallowed him up. And I think the strength and conditioning, all those things at Michigan State in the last 18 months, have agreed with Spencer Brown. And he's, I called him a 3-star project. Rivals.com had him as a 4-star. And I was like, I'm not so sure about that. Well, they might turn out to be right about that. I said 3-star project, which means 3-star right now. But there's a lot of, he's a project. There's some unknowns and some problems there that need to be ironed out. But 4-star ceiling, possibly. He's on the path for that and looking pretty good, to the point where I'm wondering, does he play 50% of the snaps in these games? Does he earn that? I mean, when Michigan State played him in the second quarter, they were putting him out there to win the game, obviously. He had earned that, but also they wanted to look at it to see what it looks like. I'm sure that's one of the things they're talking about. It would not shock me if he starts at right tackle and Jarvis starts inside. I think you start Buter, though, just because of the experience. He's been in those situations. You start Buter. But Brown gives them somebody there now. They had a 9-man offensive line rotation. Matt Carrick out for the year. Jarrett Horst not really available, so now they're down to 7. And then Luke Campbell, he's kind of wearing out. And listening to him at the press conferences today, just a guy that's got all kinds of heart, Ohio kid that really wants badly to go down there and play well. And he was saying he came back, hoping to maybe play football afterwards, after college, but he says his body's telling him now that that's not going to be an option. So he says he's not going to Ohio State to play for any scouts. He just wants to go out there and provide anything he can for the team. No, he didn't mention snap numbers, but reading between the lines, he means he's going to give it everything he can, whether it's 5 snaps or 10 snaps, everything he can for his brothers, he said. Luke Campbell wants this very badly. He's a guy that's very introspective, very well-spoken, and speaks in a monotone, almost depressed kind of. But within that, you can really get to the the focus that he has and the determination that he has. And I thought it was one of the great quotes I've heard. I'm not playing for any scouts. I'm going down there to play for my brothers. And he knows he's not a starter. And he played pretty well early in the year. There were some games where I thought he played as well, if not better, than Horst. But he's worn down. Did not play well against Michigan. Everybody saw that. Only played about 8 or 9 snaps against Maryland. So who knows? Maybe he doesn't get on the field against these guys because, the defensive ends are pretty good. Zach Harrison, number 9, and then Tyreek Smith comes in. He's been getting healthier than Jean-Baptiste at 6'5", 255. Harrison, 6'6", 272. Then bring in this guy, Jack Sawyer, this freshman, real good with the bull rush. Ohio State, he's got 3 sacks. Freshman, 6'4", 250. He's going to be a good player for a long time. Number 1 player in Ohio last year. They've got, they may not have Bosa or Chase Young, but they've got depth there, and they keep putting people on the field. And Luke Campbell, he might get out there a little bit. We'll see how he does, but Spencer Brown doing okay. So my point was they were kind of down to they started with 9 offensive linemen, then they were with 8 without Carrick, 7 without Horst, and then you kind of have Campbell, but you're at 6. But now with Brown, that gives them another one at 7, and they can use that. Ohanba came in the game for Mop-up in the last 6 plays, and a lot of times, when Mop-up duty starts, I really focus in because I want to see what's going on with the third string. Those next guys that are knocking on the door potentially for playing time. Sometimes it's seniors that they're throwing on the field just to get on the field. But if it's younger guys, developmental guys, Ohanba was a guy that was a mop-up guy last year. Has not played as much this year. I think he's still on field goal protection. He came in, left guard out of Georgia, big guy. And he was smashing some people. I know it was only 4 or 5 reps, but a lot of times when I'm watching the mop-up duty at the end of a game, and offensive linemen come in, and sometimes they look like second-string offensive linemen. They're a little slower. They're a little bit, clumsier with what they're getting into. Not Ohanba, man. And he was going against Maryland, and Maryland still had their starters in there, and those guys were worn down, and they probably didn't want to bang anymore. Ohanba got in there, and he bashed some people. They pulled him one time on a counter, and he took on a tight end and bashed him. Like I said, Maryland had gotten a little soft by that time. But even in those situations, when you bring in third stringers, a lot of times they just kind of look a little clumsy, and you can tell they don't look like starters. Ohanba looked like a starting quality type of potential guy. I thought Brown and Ohanba both look pretty good, which is important because Michigan State's going to be graduating a lot of offensive linemen. They'll be getting in the portal, I think, also for an offensive lineman, at least one. But I thought that mop-up part of it was pretty good. All right, let's see. We got, this is when we're doing our sound check. YT Sparty says, we should lose to Ohio State, but I would not be shocked with a W. Check him out. Detroit Spartan says, glad you got my message, Comp. Yeah, we had some problems with some technical difficulties early on. And it's late already. It's 11 o'clock, so I want to go through this quickly. George Page, the former keyboard player for To Surrender Dorothy, and also Casual 6, says, Comp, enjoy reading your .comp article this week and how we should be grateful for a player like Kenneth Walker in the great season. Do you think the team will lean on him this week more? 40-plus carries. No, I don't think health-wise he can do 40-plus carries. If he, no way. But if he gets more than 25 carries, that's a great sign. YT Sparty says, is Barrow back? I don't know. I don't know what was going on there. That was peculiar. I'm not sure. But my guess is he'll be back. My guess is that Crouch will be back. I don't know all the information there. James Bannon says, do you see any flips this cycle for Michigan State? I don't know if you mean flips coming to Michigan State or Michigan State recruits going elsewhere. The corner from Tennessee is looking elsewhere. I don't know what that is all about. Shannon, what's his name? Anyway, as far as recruits go, I had a question over here in the mailbag from Ronnie M. And he says, what's your take on the Michigan State 2022 recruiting class? Any surprises brewing? So I put that question out to my guy, Jason Killip, recruiting writer, SpartanMag.com. And he helped me out with some information, coming out of the visit weekend and just what's going on. But he pointed out that Michigan State had a visit from Kentucky commitment his cornerback, Alex Afari. He's a 4-star corner from Westchester, Ohio, Lakota West High School, ranked the number 12 player in Ohio, committed to the Wildcats, Kentucky, came to Michigan State. He likes Michigan State's coaches, and Jason says, hey, he likes their coaches. We'll see what materializes, if it materializes to an official visit. So that one's on hold a little bit, but getting him on campus, not a bad thing for that 4-star corner. 3-star defensive end, Zion Young from Atlanta. He's committed to West Virginia, 6'6", 225. And Jason feels Michigan State's got a solid chance there if Michigan State goes full blast and decides that he's the guy that they want. And hard to tell on those things sometimes, but those guys visited. Jason says keep an eye on December 10th. That's the big weekend for Michigan State. That's the weekend when Michigan State will be bringing in their commitments. So it's a big red carpet weekend. It's December 10th. And goodness gracious, that might be Heisman Trophy weekend. Can you imagine that? If he wins the Heisman Trophy, Kenneth Walker, during Michigan State's big recruiting visit weekend. Now that's different because if Kenneth Walker is out in New York City, Mel Tucker's going to be out there with him. And I imagine Piegler will be with him and probably Kapilovic also. So you won't have all your coaches for the entire recruiting weekend. So that's when you kind of have to get your private jet going. And Michigan State's got one, so you can be two places at once. But can you imagine that being part of a recruiting visit weekend? We're going to watch the Heisman Trophy ceremony. We'll see on that one. Harold Perkins, four-star outside linebacker, 6'3", 200 from Cypress Park, Texas. He might visit Michigan State that weekend, December 10th. Keontae Goodwin, not sure where he might be going that weekend. He's the big offensive lineman. Michigan State was looking pretty good for him, although he's committed to Kentucky. Michigan State was looking pretty good for him like 4 weeks ago. Alabama got in there. Now he's planning to take official visits to Florida State and Texas A&M. So that one's getting a little murky. It's competitive. But once upon a time, I might have had Michigan State the leader amongst the field of the people that were trying to flip him, but now that one's getting murkier. Armani Winfield, the wide receiver, four-star from Texas, 6'2", 185, Louisville, Texas, ranked number 188 in the country. He's committed to the Longhorns, but there's a lot of drama down there in Austin right now around the Longhorns. People they're freaking out after losing to Kansas. They're 4-5 now. It's like the longest losing streak since the 1950s or something. They're freaking out down there. So if there's ever been a time to flip a recruit from Texas, it's now. And Michigan State's been snooping around with Armani Winfield for a long time. Visited a couple of months ago. And that one's, I'm not going to say like Michigan State's turned the corner and trying to flip him, but that one is not looking worse as it goes along. Detroit Spartan says Ron Armstrong does not only know the game, he played the game. He's a true Spartan dog, an even better man. Such a benefit to SpartanMag and MSU community in general. He is. I agree with that. I like Ron. Good guy. I need to see him more around town now. But we're busy. Everybody's busy, but I got to do that. We got to make that happen. YT Spartan says there are two matchups. MSU flex defense versus Ohio State struggling in the red zone. Michigan State pass D against the three best wide receivers in the NCAA. Yeah, that's one way to put it. Michigan State's pass defense against the best wide receiver package in college football. So I mean, Ohio State's going to throw for their 400 yards. They just are. So you got to throw for 300 also, and you got to run it, and you got to win the turnover battle somehow. That means taking care of it and getting a little bit lucky, knocking one loose somewhere. Michigan State will probably have to steal a possession somewhere, so I wouldn't be surprised to see a fake punt or going forward on fourth down when they get chances like they did against Michigan. Then you could get in a situation where you start deciding games in the red zone. If Michigan State can prevent the 70-yarders, and if they catch you in man-to-man and hit that shallow crossing route, and JSN gets rolling, like Ron said, it can be easy to pick the wrong pursuit angle. Sometimes pursuit angles won't even do it either with the speed that those guys have after the catch. The run after the catch. The run after the catch. Tackling guys. Sounds simple. It's not like Michigan State's going to go out there and forget about tackling, but there's a reason those guys are hard to tackle because those Ohio State receivers are outstanding. Let's see what we got here.
Jake?
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press
All right, Jake from Annapolis, Maryland, you are live. You're on the air right now. Welcome to SpartanMag Live.
Yeah, I just have a quick question about college football.
Okay.
So Cincinnati gets ranked 5th tonight.
Yeah.
Once again.
Yeah.
And everybody's biggest complaint is they're barely winning these games in the American Conference.
Yeah.
My biggest problem with it is whether or not the committee wants them to blow them out But then if they blow them out, the conference doesn't look very good.
That's a good
So
point.
if they're playing these close games, it's a legitimate conference.
Yeah. I think the best method for them would have been to have blown out Tulsa, blown out some of these other teams, and then you might be excused to win a more competitive game against SMU and Houston. Would that make sense? That would have been the better path to go. But the committee's got a tough one there. They got a tough one there.
I mean, when all's said and done, we don't really know the landscape, obviously. But at the end of the day, there's some legitimate, talent in the American Conference, and Cincinnati. What did they lost one game last year
To Georgia.
Exactly.
Almost beat them. Almost beat them.
That's my biggest complaint. They should be at the end of the day. I'm hoping they'll be in the college football playoff, or else they have to expand. It's crazy.
Yeah. The interesting thing is, Alabama being ranked in the top 4, they deserve it now. But 2 or 3 weeks ago, they were not playing well, and they were number 2 in the country, and you cannot argue they were number 2 in the country based on reputation and based on what they've been in the past, which is okay. I think that's kind of almost fair, even if it's subconscious. But if you're going to reward Alabama for that way, then I think you got to give points to Cincinnati for what they were last year and how well they played against Georgia. If you give Alabama credit on that, Cincinnati deserves some credit on that too. But
yeah, I hope the committee recognizes it towards the end of the year, because the reality is they should be undefeated when all's said and done. So, I'm hoping they make it in.
If they win out and Alabama loses another game to Georgia, an SEC title game, and then you've got the Oregon, Ohio State question, this could end up being the most difficult knot that they've ever had to try to untie there in the college football playoff committee. I posed this question earlier. The Michigan thing, it really doesn't matter, because Michigan State's got to go out and try to beat Ohio State, and nobody's expecting them to win that game. Then beating Penn State's not going to be easy, and winning the Big Ten title or tournament would not. I mean, it's really hard to finish from here. But what if Michigan State beats Ohio State, and then Michigan beats Ohio State? I know that's not going to happen, but that is why it's noteworthy that Michigan is ahead of Michigan State right now, despite the head-to-head result. Does Michigan remain ahead of Michigan State all the way up if they both beat Ohio State? Because then Michigan State, if they both win out, Michigan State will go to the Big Ten title game and then play Wisconsin. I would imagine if you beat Wisconsin, then Michigan State would maybe move ahead of Michigan. This is all fairy tale stuff. That's not all going to happen. But the head-to-head thing, for them to throw that out, I don't care. It's not going to make a big deal, because Michigan State's probably going to lose to Ohio State anyway. But I think that makes the committee look bad, because it cheapens the games that were already played. It cheapens football games. So then we're left. So the committee is basically saying, we know that Michigan lost to Michigan State, but we still think they're better. So hey, then let's do this. Let's judge and see how good the committee is. Let's have the committee predict 10 games this weekend. And if they go 10-0, then I'll say, okay, you guys do know who's better. Let's every week let them predict games as a committee, and I guarantee they're not going to go 10, not going to go undefeated. They'll get them wrong just like everybody else does. But for them to say, oh, Michigan's better, whatever. It's a different committee, but they did get it right. They did get it right in 2014 when they had Ohio State jump TCU and Baylor and get in, and they won the national title. They got that one right. Anything else, Jake?
No, I mean, we're just giving this committee too much power and too much leeway to be creating the narrative, I think. And at the end of the day, go Bearcats. I'm hoping the American Conference can get in.
Bearcat fan right there. There he goes. All right, got a call from Bearcat fan. Say hello to Mike Tressel. Good man. All right, I'm going back over here to the chat area. Actually, let me go back over here to the mailbag. Apex Predator from the Antarctic Ocean says, Jim, will you be bringing back the 3-2-1 post-game articles? Glad that you mentioned that, kind of. It's interesting because after the Michigan game, I wrote a 3-2-1, but not a .comp, and a lot of people were kind of upset about that. So this time I wrote a .comp, and it went a little longer than I thought. I didn't write a 3-2-1. My plan was to write both times. Didn't happen. I was planning to do a 3-2-1 to the point that I had an outline ready. And but by the time I was done with .comp, it was 7 in the morning. I'd been working all night, and we had some people coming over. I mean, if I didn't have anybody in the house and I knew I could just work straight through and then sleep till 4 in the morning, or till 4 in the afternoon, I would have done it. But it was 7 a.m. I'd been working all night. I needed to get in bed. But my outline for the 3-2-1, the 3-2-1 article at SpartanMag.com means we point out 3 things we learned, 2 questions, 1 prediction. 3-2-1. The 3 things we learned, I was going to say that even though Michigan State has problems on defense, some of the problems were treatable in this game, and that might have been a good thing going forward. The thing that was treatable in this game was third down defense. Michigan State, I think, held Maryland to 3 out of 13. Now, Maryland's not Purdue. Maryland's got a very good pass offense, but it's harder to stop Purdue on third down. But Michigan State against Purdue just flat out had some same-pageness problems where they were not all on the same page in the defensive backfield, cost them a few times. In this game against Maryland, not only was Michigan State better in terms of same-pageness, which is the term I think I invented. It's not really a word, but being on the same page in the pass defense, not only were they on the same page Michigan State was, but they did it while pressuring with 5. Sometimes it was a 5-man rush and a zone blitz. So like 2 linebackers were coming and an defensive lineman was dropping off, and it was a zone blitz. Sometimes a zone pressure with 4, but they were able to do those and stay on the same page in the back. Got off the field on third down better. That was a step in the right direction. That would have been number 1. Second thing we learned is that red zone defense for Michigan State was still a strength. Still a strength for Michigan State. The red zone defense, Maryland drove and didn't score, didn't cash in. That first and goal 2-yard line play by Piotrowski was big, and then the wholesale blitz on third down was good at that time. And then Noah Harvey with that 45-degree drop and the interception, big play right there also. And other red zone stoppages were good for Michigan State on that day. Number 3, the thing that we learned is that Peyton Thorne is a big-time dealer, man. He's a big-time reliable asset as a quarterback. The flea flicker pass was a rope. Brian Hoyer, had a pretty good career at Michigan State, and he's had a great career as a backup in the NFL. But one thing Hoyer had was a finger roll. Excuse me, that was George Gervin. One thing that Hoyer had when he was from the left hash or to the wide side of the field, especially to the right, outside the numbers, had a hose. Zip. Sometimes you had to be there to see it live. Hoyer had a good arm. Peyton Thorne, flea flicker. Zip. I mean, he throws it 58 yards, left hash, outside the numbers, and 58 in the air, like 53, according to the football grid. But low trajectory, just zoom out there. Strong arm right there. And also nice touch on that slot fade to Jaden Reed. I mean, Thorne sometimes throwing people open when they're not open, and sometimes hitting them now when they're open. He's starting to show off a little bit. He's pretty good. 2 questions. Number 1. I'll go question number 2 first. Number 2, of course, is can Michigan State patch up its pass defense enough and ramp up its pass rush in time to compete with Ohio State? Ohio State's going to throw for 400. They're going to throw for their 400. Can't allow 500, but they're going to get their 400. Can you still win when they throw for 400? He threw for 400 against Oregon, and Oregon beat them. That's football today, and it's not a comfortable way to do it, but with those wide receivers, you're not going to contain them. They're going to get out, but you got to get out too. You got to steal some possessions, you got to win the turnover battle somehow, and you got to make them not score from 60 yards out. You got to make them get in the red zone and punch it in from there, because Ohio State's red zone offense has been okay, but the red zone defense has not been so good. I don't know. It's going to be tough. The other question was, where will Thorne to Reed, Peyton Thorne to Jaden Reed, where will that tandem rank among Michigan State's all-time best quarterback to wide receiver connections? What I'm doing now is I'm going through my 3-2-1. This is what I was going to write for 3-2-1. I had the outline all done, but I just had to go to bed. So to answer your question, I was going to do it, and this is what it was going to be. So you guys can chime in over here in the chat area. Who are the best wide receiver quarterback combinations? I've got a list right here, but we'll see what you guys say. Any of you guys that are still with me, go ahead and put your thoughts up on that one. All right, we've been through the recruiting question. We went through the question from Milwaukee. All right, Sparkplug from Parts Unknown says, I suggested, he says, that the best way to slow down C.J. Stroud of Ohio State is to collapse the interior pocket with both tackles, one gapping for Michigan State on all 3 downs. This will open up some running lanes, But if the defensive tackles can prevent Stroud from stepping into his throws and the defensive ends, linebackers, defensive backs bringing some heat from any and all directions, Ohio State's offense may have a subpar day. All right, that's a good point. I wouldn't be surprised to see some one-gapping here and there. Michigan State does do some one-gapping once in a while. The Drew Jordan sack, I think, was one-gapping. Nebraska got a stop against Ohio State on a 3rd and short. Nebraska's a big two-gapping team up front, but it was 3rd and short, I think, in the second quarter, and they one-gapped, and they got in there for tackle for loss and stopped it. If you're two-gapping all day and you go to a one-gap, you can make it work. Maybe not all day, but there's nothing wrong with one-gapping. Let's see what we got here.
Call from
Connor.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
What do you guys think? Let's bring him on. I don't know how this one's going to go. I got the dump button ready. We'll see what happens. Connor, welcome to SpartanMag Live. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Really good. What's on your mind?
So I was just wondering. I had a couple questions about injuries.
Yeah.
And another thing, I saw that I don't know how in tune you are to the social media aspect of like when players are posting things online, but I've seen, obviously things about Ricky White posting on his Instagram, and a bunch of the players like reposting it on their Instagrams and sending like winky faces and stuff. I was wondering if you knew if that had any, relevance to if he's to be coming back, or if that's just because he's like cleared to play in future or something, or
I don't know about that. Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. I would not, if he's reinstated, he's not trained at this point to help anytime soon. So I would not anticipate that. But I found it interesting that, a lot of these things have gone on social media with players. I did not notice the things you're talking about. It doesn't surprise me, but Ricky's been doing some of those all along. I'm surprised that he's, earnestly has wanted to stay at Michigan State and stay in the program when it could have been really easy for him to just say, hey, man, I'm going to get a new beginning somewhere else and hit the portal. So he wants to be back at Michigan State, and they're trying to, rattle some pans and make that happen. But that's all I know at this point. But in terms of the program, I guess since he wants to be at Michigan State, it would not shock me if that happens at some point. But bowl game at the earliest, I would think. I mean, if something happened, it's conceivable he could get back on the practice field and dress. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but getting on the field this year, I don't think so. I don't see how that could happen.
Yeah, that's kind of what I figured. I just didn't know if you knew if that was possible of any sort, or how long he'd been practicing or anything. But yeah, I didn't think so really either. And then my other questions were just kind of regarding like injuries. I mean, I've been trying to watch Mel's press conferences and stuff, and I know all year he's kind of been saying the same old of, when they're ready to play, they're ready to play. They'll give us what they can.
Yeah.
Have you heard anything about, things with Crouch or Naylor or anyone like that?
Yeah, Naylor, I don't think he's going to be back anytime soon. He has that hand injury. He's a receiver, and some of the initial things, that's kind of what I was hearing on that one. He's still involved. He's still a pretty good hype man on the sideline and in the locker room. My guess, I've not heard this, but I've just, if you're wondering what I'm thinking maybe the bowl game is what I'm thinking with Naylor. Now, that's not anything I've heard, no inside information there. That's just a hunch. And they always tell media people not to speculate on injuries, but this is a talk show. You're wondering what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking. As far as Crouch goes, I'm not really sure what happened there. I have a feeling we're going to see him this weekend, though, and I'm not sure what happened with Barrow either. I don't know. I didn't see
that was my next thing I was going to ask about Barrow. I didn't know why he was not playing. Or
neither do I.
If you knew anything about that.
And they could use him. They could use him this weekend.
They definitely. And then, I mean, I don't know. Did you hear anything about Brantley? I mean, again, with the whole in social media stuff, he posted a thing on his Instagram with him in a sling. I didn't know. I didn't hear anything that was like reported, but I knew he was injured. I didn't know that he was really out that severely.
Yeah. The initial things I heard after that game is that it wasn't very good for this year for him. I'm surprised that some of these players are dropping hints like that on social media, because Mel Tucker's big on not giving away any information on injuries. I think at some point Mel might stamp that out. He doesn't want players. Yeah. He doesn't want the opponent to know who's going to be available and who's not going to be available. But Brantley, I don't think it's going to be Brantley. I'm not expecting him to be back. But in the meantime, Lowry came back, and he made an impact against Maryland. I thought he played well. Ronald Williams was back on the field.
I like Lowry all year.
Yeah, and I thought that was his best game. playing with some physicality. Ronald Williams continues to get comfortable at the corner position. That corner situation is looking pretty good. We had Ron Armstrong on earlier, and he's kind of wondering if Ronald might move to safety for next year because he's got the frame to do it. But those three guys, Kimbrough, Lowry, Williams, those three corners from the portal, I think they're getting more and more traction. I think those guys looking better.
Yeah, that's interesting about the Ronald Williams thing at safety. I didn't really thought about that, but that makes sense. I mean, thinking about, you got to think also about where they're going to put Dylan Tatum next year if he's going to be have a role right off the bat. But no, I could definitely see them, putting Lowry on one side, Chester because Chester will be back, right?
Yes.
And then I don't see why with Henderson moving on. I mean, I don't see why he couldn't be there. I mean, he's tall. I mean, he's a ball hawk. I mean, I can see it, but that's if he doesn't declare. If I could see him as well, I don't know.
He's technically.
That's cool. I haven't thought of that.
He's technically a senior, but I think he's enjoying. He's still he's still pretty raw as a defensive back. He's still learning. So one more year in this system, I think it would help him.
Yeah, I've noticed a lot of growth from him this year. To be honest, Seth, I wasn't very pleased with a lot of things. But I mean, like you said, he does seem to be a little more comfortable.
Yeah, Ronald Williams, he struggled as a starter in that opener against Northwestern, but he's come along nicely. But that was his first start in college football.
I think you're recruited to Alabama for a reason. You can play football.
Absolutely. But anything else, Connor?
Yeah. I mean, while I'm talking about it, I mean, I guess I kind of wanted to hear. I just got done. I'm working at IM East here in East Lansing as a student. I'm just watching the college football playoff and them talk about it afterwards. And I mean, I really just don't. I can't see why they're liking Michigan so much. And I understand what they're saying is they're not looking just into head-to-head matchups. They're not looking just into strength of schedule. But I mean, they're looking at they're trying to use it as their reasoning for them being ahead of us is that they there's the numbers, and I mean obviously the eye test that their defense is significantly better, their offense even is better, and things like that. And I understand that they're saying, but I don't understand why they're playing the games if they're not going to matter. Absolutely. I understand when they earlier, I forget the commissioner's name, but when he was explaining, he was trying to say that the reason why the difference. Someone asked the difference of Ohio State and Oregon versus Michigan State, and his reasoning was that the two different scenarios, and they don't try and compare them; they look at them differently. And they were trying to say that Oregon has obviously Ohio State beating these teams, but Oregon has that top 10 win that Ohio State doesn't have, and they were using that as the reasoning why they should be ahead. But what top 10 win does Michigan have? I mean, I don't understand what they're trying to go with there. I mean, obviously, I'm sitting there saying, "Oh, Michigan's a more complete team," but how are they going to be better than a team if they beat them? So I guess I don't really understand what they like so much about Michigan. I understand they're a good football team, but I just don't see why they're giving them the edge because everyone's saying, "Oh, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter as long as State and Michigan both control their own fate." But that type of thing could matter. Absolutely. I mean, going forward, if Michigan State and Michigan both beat Ohio State,
yes,
then what are they going to do? I mean, obviously, yes, if Michigan State goes to the, goes and wins a championship for the Big Ten, obviously they're in, but that's not always a done deal. I mean, they could have a stumble with Penn State. There are ways where that could affect it, and I don't like them really saying, "Oh, it'll all settle itself out," when really that hasn't.
I agree. If Michigan had a victory over Purdue, that might be different. Then you can compare. Maybe, but no. I mean, head to head, that they're wrong to do that. It doesn't matter. I'm not gonna sit here and whine about it like Jim Harbaugh would. But yeah, the committee they're stupid to do it that way. Ignorant. Yeah. All right, IM East.
They definitely need to expand.
Guys, so is there some intramural games going on over there tonight?
Yeah, there is. There was a lot of volleyball, a lot of basketball. Just closing up. Heading back to Hubbard.
Everybody behave themselves? No bare knuckle brawls going on? Do you have to break up any fights or anything?
I mean, not today.
Not today? Any people being rude to the officiating? Being rude to the officials? Always a problem?
Oh, you always hear that. Always hear that, actually.
That's too bad.
Mainly in the volleyball games.
Really? Whether it's in or out? Wow.
Yeah, they like to chirp.
Wow. We need to change the culture in this country a little bit more to be more accepting of umpires and the jobs that they do in all sports. They're just doing the best they can.
Yeah, as we're sitting here criticizing the decisions made by the committee.
Committee's fair game. I'm talking about umpires on the field.
Yeah.
Committee's fair game. All right. I'll talk to you later, man. Thanks a lot, Connor. There he goes. There goes Connor. All right. Questions over here. So actually, what else was I talking about? All right, Sparkplug was talking about the best way to slow down Stroud in Ohio State is to collapse the interior pocket with both tackles one gapping on all three downs. This will open up some running lanes, he says, and the defensive tackles can prevent Stroud from stepping up into his throws, and with defensive ends and linebackers bringing heat from all in any directions. Okay, so I mentioned that Nebraska stopped Ohio State in the first half once when they've always been a two-gapping team. They went one gapping, they stopped. Sometimes third and short, that can be effective. If you're one gapping, you have to bring a safety in or sometimes a corner off the edge in order to host all gaps. If you have 6 men blocking, 5 offensive linemen if you have 5 offensive linemen, there's 6 gaps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 outside shoulder, everybody in. 5 offensive linemen, 6 gaps. At a tight end, you have 6. That gives you 7 gaps. If you're going to one gap, if you're at 4-2 against or 4-3 against a standard with a fullback and 2 tight ends, or one tight end and a fullback, or 2 tight ends, you have to bring a safety in because 5 offensive linemen and 2 tight ends, that's 7. You need 8 to fill. That'd be 4 defensive linemen, 3 linebackers, and a safety. So you have to incorporate a defensive back to host all gaps if you're going to one gap across the board. That's why 2 gapping, if you do it effectively and you displace the line of scrimmage and you have the linebackers kind of playing 75-25 on gaps, able to read and react and jump gaps, that can allow you to fit all the gaps without bringing a safety down if you're strong and sturdy enough to do it. If you 2-gap really effectively, it gives the illusion that you've got 12 on defense. If you do it right, hard to do. But if you want a 1-gap, that's fine, but you're going to have to incorporate a safety to stop the run, and now you're creating even more open windows back here and less of a safety net for those receivers that are going to get loose. I agree with you that getting Stroud collapsing that pocket is the way to affect him, but that offensive line is so good. They've only given up 5 or 6 sacks all year in Big Ten games. So Michigan State is going to bring some pressures. I'm expecting more of the zone pressures we saw against Maryland, where you're bringing some pressures, but you're keeping 2 deep safeties just to try to, if he completes things, keep it in front rather than living, on a higher wire without a net, single safety deep, blitzing, pressing everybody. They'll do that once in a while, but not the whole game. Just once in a while they might throw that at them. I think Michigan State's going to try to have to disguise things, change the pictures, and bring some pressures. Maybe not all the time, but it's going to be trying to change all those things up. That's the way you have to do it. Like I agree with what Ron said. If Michigan State sits back in a zone all day like they did against Miami, he'll pick them apart with guys that'll run after the catch better. Plus, Michigan State's not hitting as hard right now as they did early in the season against Miami just because of the wear and tear of the season. I think we'll see a little bit of all of that. We'll see a little bit of one gapping here and there. But to your point, you want to see like all one gapping. I don't think we're going to see that. I think that would be a fast death. But against Ohio State, you might be looking at death either way. Fast death. Slow death is even hard to get with them. But it's usually death either way, unless you're Oregon. He says, my question is, does all-out relentless pressure have any chance of working? Yes, that would work if the pressures can get home. But Ohio State is so good. I mean, Michigan, even 2 years ago against Don Brown, all the pressure they would do, they just hit those crossers, run after the catch. And now I think Ohio State's run after the catch on crossers is even better than it's ever been. I would say maybe even better than even Urban Meyer's team. These 3 guys can catch and go. Rob South from Clinton Township says, what is holding this extension on Tucker up? What's holding it up? Sounds like everyone is on board except maybe one person. Seems ridiculous. I don't know anything about that. I heard that Rico Beard and Mike Valenti were talking about that on 97.1 The Ticket in Detroit today. I've not heard that from my sources, so I'm not going to speak on that to this point. They're saying that the president is holding it up. I don't know. What do you want to wait to see what happens, after these games are played? I'm not sure. If you're going to announce the extension, I would think you'd want to do it on Friday before the Ohio State game. You announce the extension before the game in case you get blown out. Friday's a good news dump day. That's just kind of what I've been expecting. I don't know. Gator from Farmington Hills, Michigan says, I think we can get past Penn State, but not Ohio State. He says, could beat Ohio State if the whole team was healthy, he thinks. It's his opinion. He says, Michigan State's looking at a 10-2 season. Where does that put Michigan State in a bowl game? 10-2, what a great season that would be. So that's the question that he posed. 10-2, can you imagine if they finish 10-2? Beating Penn State won't be easy, but I don't know where Penn State's going to be mentally by that time. Who does Penn State play this week? Have they played? Oh, they play Rutgers. And that's going to be interesting because Rutgers hates them. And Penn State acts like they don't have a rival. Well, that's fine. You might not see Pittsburgh as a rival or Maryland or Rutgers or Michigan State. That's fine. But if Rutgers sees you as a rival, you better, be ready for a bare knuckler. I'm not saying Rutgers is any good, but Rutgers is coming off a game. Who'd they blow out last week? Indiana? Rutgers and Penn State cross paths a lot in recruiting. There'll be some New Jersey guys, some Pennsylvania guys on that Rutgers team. Looking forward to playing Penn State. But Rutgers, I've not seen them in the last few weeks, but when Michigan State played them, I said it going into the game that Rutgers in the defensive backfield, a little slowish and don't play with the greatest leverage. So I could see Dotson getting out for another 200-plus passing game. But, where is the quarterback right now? Clifford. Clifford's been playing hurt. Took some hits last week. A lot of guts. Played well last week. But, they put so much on the line against Ohio State and Michigan. And the backup quarterback there situation is not good. We saw that in the Iowa game. Is there a chance Clifford, does he play? I'm not going to say he might not play or something like that. But does Penn State, do they start to lose their fizz a little bit right now? Just in time to play Rutgers? I don't know. So Michigan State, I think that could help Michigan State when they play Michigan State Senior Day against Penn State here. Thanksgiving weekend could help Michigan State a little bit. Might have a better chance to beat them then than if they would have played them back in like early October when Penn State was playing pretty well before the Iowa game. Like around the time they beat Auburn, they're pretty good. So 10-2 Michigan State, I don't know where it puts them, but it put them somewhere warm, probably in Florida. If they go 10-2 and Michigan goes 10-2, Michigan will go to the Rose Bowl. Got to get used to that idea right now. So somewhere in Florida, 10-2. Hey, if Alabama gets beat by Georgia, do they get in the tournament? Do they get in the college football playoff with 2 losses? If not, where do they end up? In a real good Florida bowl. You want to see Michigan State, Alabama again? Probably not. And the bowl promoters probably won't do that either. So you're looking at possibly a Big Ten SEC matchup. A lot of those bowl games are. So who are the next SEC teams in line for that? You'd be looking at Mississippi. If Michigan State goes 10-2, Mississippi would be in there somewhere. Texas A&M is what I'm thinking. Seems like a tall task. Mississippi can really throw it. And against Michigan State's defense, that would be interesting. Mississippi had a lot of trouble stopping the run against Alabama. Alabama just loaded up and said, with your 6 defensive back defense, you're not stopping the run. So Michigan State would try to get some stuff going on the ground down there. That'd be interesting. See if that happens. Spartan Pride from Alexandria, Virginia says, having examined Ohio State's defense and knowing the issues they've had this year, besides K9, who is the offensive player likely to cause the most issues for Michigan State? That's the question. My response would be Jaden Reed. You look at what Dotson did for Penn State and Toure for Nebraska, got loose for a 75-yarder against Latham Ransom, number 12, backup corner. They play a lot of backups. David Bell got his, but Michigan State doesn't quite have, not quite the passing attack Purdue does. They don't have a David Bell. It's got to be Jaden Reed, though. I mean, that's Thorne's favorite receiver. They got that connection. They see coverages the same, which gives them a little bit of an edge with the ball coming out. So it's got to be Reed. Big Mooby, Ron Armstrong earlier thought Trey Mosley would be the guy. But I'll go with Reed. It's the obvious one, I think. Jim from West Palm Beach, Florida says, actually it's Mike from West Palm Beach, Florida. He says, have you had a chance to look at Jalen Berger's film when he was at Wisconsin? If so, what are your thoughts? To me, he has good vision in the hole, good feet to execute that vision. And like Haskins at Michigan, he always falls forward for a couple extra yards. Impressive back as a true freshman, in my opinion. That's the end of the question. Talking about Jalen Berger, transfer. He's in the portal from Wisconsin. He visited Michigan State this past weekend and attended the Michigan State basketball game, I think Friday night. Interesting one. No, I've not looked at his film, not studied him. Watching him at Wisconsin previously, I just thought he was I didn't look at him closely enough. I just thought he was kind of okay, but maybe he's better than that. I'm not sure. You've looked at him more closely than I have, so I'm going to wait and I'll reserve my comments on that. All right, Spartan Kenny says, do you expect some key players from injury to return back to the field for Michigan State against Ohio State? Who do you believe will be covering whom as far as wide receiver corner action goes? As far as coverages goes, Michigan State usually goes right cornerback and left cornerback. They don't usually travel with people. So if Ronald Williams is on Olave and Olave goes in motion, you don't see Michigan State send that corner with him and they don't readjust. They let him go and they pick him up on the other side. Or they let him go, and even if it's man-to-man, they'll still pass him off. But usually they don't travel with him. So I don't anticipate Michigan State matching up like that. Someday when they get further along with their evolution on defense, you might see that. But I don't think Michigan State right now has like a go-to cover corner that they want to lock down with somebody. They don't have like a Darqueze Dennard that would travel with somebody, which Michigan State occasionally would do. Not very often, but occasionally. So coverage, it's going to be, Ohio State they'll put Wilson in the slot. They'll put JSN in the slot. Enigma, and he's outstanding with his quickness. So when he's in there, Snow's going to be on those guys a little bit, but especially in zone. Henderson in the middle, because when you put your best receivers in the slot, that usually dictates that the opponent has to put a safety on those. That's where you get mismatches. Like when Gross was, Michigan really attacked Gross. Michigan State played a lot of man-to-man that day. They put Gross in the slot. And they attacked him with Sanders still, and they attacked him with somebody else once or twice. So they were, Michigan was creating that matchup by formation and going after him, wanting that. And then since then, Michigan State has not played Gross man-to-man. Since then, Michigan State has not played Gross man-to-man in the slot. He's been a single deep safety, and they've had Henderson up a little bit more. So they tried to do that with Gross. Gross has a background as a corner, but it just didn't work out that great. But all the more reason to look at Ronald Williams in that role for next year if he's a safety, if he shows he can tackle well enough, hit hard enough, communicate things back there in the back. When you do go man-to-man across the board, you can put him in the slot and not have those reservations about it the way you would have them with Gross right now. So I don't think Michigan State's they'll play some man-to-man, but I'm expecting more zone for Michigan State in this one. And it'll be cover 4, cover 6, cover 3. They'll mix it up. They'll try to disguise it with some pressures in there also. And they'll fake some pressures. It's got to be everybody on the same page. You got to get the pass rush home, even if it's with 4 or 5 against a very good offensive line, which is hard to do. So it's going to take a lot of things. Connor from Chicago says Michigan State will likely give up at least 30 points. He says, does this offense have what it takes to take a page out of Oregon's book and really attack the edges of the Ohio State defense with the outside zone and the buck sweeps? Oregon was heavily undermanned with a quarterback, Anthony Brown, who was not asked to do a whole lot. Oregon gave up a lot through the air and managed to pull it off. What have the Buckeyes changed on defense to counter a strong run game? This will be the first time they've seen a competent run game since then. They couldn't stop the run. Ohio State could not stop the run against Oregon. Those outside zones, I think that all there is to the short side in the red zone over and over. The buck sweep. I think I talked about that in the bunker when I looked over that film way back in September. The buck sweep, and that's with the pulling guard going out that way. And Ohio State fired their defensive coordinator. They changed their defense. They started playing more zone. They played a lot of man-to-man that day, and they were just continually getting outflanked, out-gapped out to the outside, and it was bad. They were out-coached. They looked bad. Ryan Day didn't like it and fired Coombs. Kept him on staff, but that's what they've changed. What they've changed is they changed the people calling the defenses. Interesting. And there's been more zone out of them. I think they've simplified things. Will Michigan State replicate some of those things? A little bit, but the Ohio State of back then, it's a different Ohio State now. Still not a great defense. Ohio State people are nervous about how much Ohio State is giving up through the air. What did O'Connell throw for Purdue last week? 360 or something? 370? And Clifford threw for like 370 or 380. So they're giving up things through the air. So I think for Michigan State to have that balance, air and ground, I think it's the most balanced offense that they've faced. Penn State does not run the ball that well this year. Purdue does not run the ball that well. So Michigan State's got some balance. That's been a big reason why they're 9-1. So Ohio State, with their problems on defense, they got a chance here against a pretty decent test to show that they've improved on defense. And they may very well do that. Brian from Ludington, Michigan says, is there any explanation for how well the offensive line blocked for Jordan Simmons against Maryland compared to how well the offensive line blocked against Kenneth Walker? He says, that was my take from each time Simmons subbed in for Walker. Simmons did have a productive day. Averaged about, 6 yards a carry, maybe? 6 carries, 36 yards, something like that. And when I was taking notes on the game last night, and you posted the question today, I did notice that, and I looked into it. Basically, Kenneth Walker was going against an extra man in the box the whole game. They were going single safety deep and bringing a safety into the box. So if Michigan State had 6 blockers, they had 7. If Michigan State had 5 blockers, they had 6. They always had an extra man. So even if Michigan State was getting a hat on the hat and every offensive lineman was conducting a good, solid stalemate block, they still weren't getting room for Walker because there was always an extra unblocked guy within a yard of the line of scrimmage, 2 yards of the line of scrimmage. They committed that, so that opened up some things for Michigan State. So they did that single safety deep and did a lot of press coverage, daring Michigan State to say, okay, we're committing a safety to the box, so we can't play. It's harder to play zone that way. You can do cover 3, but then you're giving up some curls. They tried to play press, so what did Michigan State do a lot of? Try to beat that press, stock block, flea flicker, touchdown. In the slot, it was off man-to-man, slot corner, touchdown. And then you saw some of those back shoulder fades to Reed. Couldn't do it like all the time, but when Michigan State took shots, they were throwing to some open air that way because there was more open air because there was a safety in the box creating more open air back there. So Walker was always running into a loaded box, more so in this game than any game all year. That's the thing about Kenny Walker and Kenneth Walker. Conan Dyke and I were talking about that at the VCast today outside the Perlis Plaza. You can watch that over at SpartanMag.com. But Kenneth Walker has done all these things, leading the nation in yards per game, I think, still. And over 140 yards 3 straight times. He's doing these things while going against defenses that are stacked to stop him and also doing it behind an okay offensive line. When Mark Ingram was winning a Heisman Trophy at Alabama, or Derrick Henry was winning a Heisman Trophy for Alabama, the last 2 running backs to win the Heisman, they were going to work behind great offensive lines. Derrick Henry's offensive line, their offensive line won the Heisman Trophy for offensive lines, whatever it's called. Is it the Mal Moore Award? What's it called? I don't know. But Kenneth Walker's doing this behind a decent offensive line. And that offensive line has done really well to get to this point. I have great respect for the Michigan State's offensive line. That unit has struggled in recent years, put in a lot of work. Kapilvik did a good job. They've been a good offensive line. I'd even maybe say a plus offensive line in a lot of games. Pass protection's been pretty good, among the leaders in the Big Ten in preventing sacks. All right, I'll call them a good offensive line. A good offensive line against an extra man in the box, hard for any running back to get anything going. So Walker's yards are even more impressive in that vein, in my opinion. So as far as Simmons goes, I just charted 3 of them, 3 runs. Now, Maryland usually went with 3 down linemen, 30 defense, and all 3 of them would 2 gap, and then the linebackers filled in around them. When Simmons was on the field, they went to 2 down linemen and had 2-4 in the box. I didn't see where the safeties were, but it was not the same. I don't know if when Simmons checked in, they checked to a different defense. I assume that was what happened. They went to a 2-4. I don't even know if they subbed when that happened because defense has time to sub. But when Simmons was in there, you look at it, they didn't have 3 down linemen. It was a 2-4. It wasn't a 30. And Michigan State got good double teams against those 2. They got a good double team on the first carry, gain of 9. So they got good double team movement, and they had less resistance in there. So When Simmons checked in, Maryland went to more of a defense that was looking to defend the pass in terms of where their resources were allocated. His second carry, Maryland on that play, they've been a two-gapping team all night. On that play, they one-gapped, but they weren't gap sound. They didn't get all the gaps filled, and Simmons found light resistance, and he gained another 3 or 4 or 5 yards. The third one, it was another 1st and 10, and it was a nickel again, and it was a 5 defensive back look, which they didn't do when Walker was on the field. Simmons on the field, nickel, 2-4, 2 down linemen, those 6 in the box, and it was in the red zone. And on that one, Duplain and Arcuri got real good movement on a guy, and he gained good yardage that way. So you asked, why did the offensive line block better for Simmons? It's because they found one fewer human being in there. And it was 6 run stoppers rather than 7. They went to a nickel when Simmons was in there. So that was interesting that Michigan State went to Simmons. Maryland thought that meant pass, and Michigan State stayed on the ground and had success with it. Sparty says, hey, Jim, with Michigan State hoops playing at Hinkle Fieldhouse Wednesday night, that's one less bucket list arena to cross off. Wondering what is left on the Comparoni Power Index of stadiums, both football and basketball, that you would like to see Michigan State play in. He says, I would personally love to see Michigan State play football at West Point. Yeah, include me in on that one too. If Army was not so difficult to play, the wishbone and all that. Who was it that played in Army? Who played at Army this year? Did Illinois play at Army? I don't know, but I'd love to go there. I've never been there. My friend Mike Valenti grew up near there. Been there a number of times. Says it's great. Yeah, I'd like to go to West Point someday to watch a football game. And he says, I personally would like to see Michigan State play at the Naval Academy or Colorado Springs. So he's talking about all 3 military academies. Navy, I don't know if it's as great as West Point. I've been to Annapolis. A lot of you have. Was there for basketball. Michigan State played there a few years ago. I'd put Army way up there on my bucket list. I'd like to see. I've never been to an SEC game, regular season home game in Knoxville or Athens, that type of thing. And Sparty says, in basketball, I hear there's a lot of history at Rose Hill Gymnasium at Fordham University, the oldest on-campus arena. Never been to Kansas Fog Allen Fieldhouse. I've never been to Fog Allen either. Could have went a couple years ago, didn't go, should have went. There's a few. I've not been to Fenway. I need to go there. I'd like to go to Princeton's hockey arena. There's a few. I should have written down some for that. I've been to Madison Square Garden a few times. But I've not been there for a Rangers game. I'd like to go there for a Knicks game, too, to see what that's all about, because I know they're real big into the Knicks. That might be interesting. I like to go to Madison Square Garden for anything. I've never been to Red Rocks for a concert. I was kind of looking forward to going out to watch BYU, although I thought Michigan State was going to have a tough time out there. But with the mountains out there, I thought that would be an interesting place. But the SEC, I've not done that. I think that'd be interesting. Oklahoma, Texas might be interesting at the Cotton Bowl. There's a few. I'd like to see a NASCAR race at Bristol. Sorry. I think I'd like to see the Indy 500, Kentucky Derby. There's a lot. I've not been to the College World Series. There's a lot. I mean, I go to a lot of the college things, Final Fours and bowl games. Ends up being a repeat thing, which I love. And then during the off season, I don't get enough chance to do a lot of other things that a lot of fans do. So I was planning to go to the College World Series in June of 2020, but then COVID hit. Let's go over here to that wraps it up for the mailbag. Again, give us a thumbs up here, subscribe to the channel, and also subscribe to SpartanMag.com. You'll like it. James Bannon says, have you ever seen this many highly ranked recruits visiting Michigan State on their own dime? No, I've not. This is new territory. YT Spartan says, Nebraska and Penn State hung around with Michigan State. Yes, they did. I'm studying those games, and I'll put together whatever I find for the pre-snap read later in the week. Like I said, Penn State kind of contained the run other than the one that got out for 60 yards against Ohio State. Penn State possessed the ball by throwing for 360 yards. Can Michigan State duplicate that? I haven't looked at it closely enough to see what Penn State did turnover-wise in that one, but I'll be watching that one in the hours to come. Although I'm going to Indiana tomorrow. It's a short week when you put in these basketball games in the middle of the week. Not complaining. Last week went to New York City, came back, and barely got the pre-snap read done for the Maryland game. It was done like at 8 o'clock. It was late. But it all backs up when you're having to travel on Tuesday, Wednesday. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying the hours get away from you. As a matter of fact, I need to close this off here in a minute. Hayden Vischer, there's no need for Naylor to be used as a decoy. Let's see what else we have here. Zenon Dean says, run the ball and grind out the clock. Keep them cold and off the field. It's a good one. And that worked in 2015 when Michigan State kept them cold and off the field when that drizzle was going on. Wintry mix. That day when Michigan State won that game, it was snowing in Michigan that day, but further down I-75 it became rain. And it was miserable there in the Horseshoe that day, especially for Ohio State people. But if you want to run the ball and run clock, do you also do some of Michigan State's tempo? Because tempo can be effective, but then it doesn't go along with the running of the clock. Maybe a little bit of both. Can you do both? Is it possible to do both? I saw... Is it Nebraska? I don't know. It seems counterintuitive to be able to do both, but you can do a little bit of tempo, quick tempo here and there when you're on it, and then fake tempo, and then get over the ball and run the play clock down and keep looking at the sideline to run clock short in the game. I think there is something to that you could be. There's a long list of things that need to happen to be effective, and that could be one of them. YT Sparty says Tuck can be a lousy coach, but his recruiting is going to be a huge boost to Michigan State. I don't think he's a lousy coach. He's a good recruiter, though, and can get better and better in that area. Philly, Chris Trainham in the house. BW says OSU defensive 7 going to work on taking away the run. Like Ron said, Ohio State sometimes doesn't get married to that idea. They like to try to stop you with a standard number sometimes. Although last year they did a lot of single safety deep, lock up the corners. But they don't do that anymore. All right, take away the run. We could pass, YT Spartan says. Chris Trinham says, did I spy Detroit Spartan out there? How goes it, brother? YT Spartan says, I'm waiting for Malik Carr to break out. They've had some plays special for him, and they've almost broken out a couple times. But you saw in this game against Maryland that they also had him in there blocking a couple times because he has to establish himself as a blocker and do it reasonably well so that the defense doesn't know every time number 6 comes on the field that it's definitely a pass play. They got to show that they will run the ball with him on the field. BW says you can't pass it if you can't establish and run in any game. Big Will says, I hope the Tucker extension can get done. YT Spartan says, Tuck does not want to live in Baton Rouge. No one wants to live in Baton Rouge. BW thought that's funny. Tim D says, the U.S. beat the Russians in 80. Anything's possible. It's true, they got outshot 52-13 too, or something like that. But Carl Agasser says, Ohio State fan here. Nice discussion so far. Thanks, Carl. YT Spartan says, the good omen is that it's Columbus. Michigan State wins in Columbus. Well, not every time. Sometimes Michigan State gets blown out down there like most teams. Tim Hughes says, going to need some help. Turnovers. And a monster game from Walker. BW says, Montori Foster's going to be the dude this weekend. Sensing some optimism from these people. That's good. All right, it's about 11:50. We're going to go ahead and wrap this up. I'm going to go make sure I didn't miss anything. There's Detroit Spartan checking in. UC Bearcat here. That was probably Jake who called in before. He says, Ohio State fan here. Buckeye fans know how great of a team Sparty is. Expect a great game on Saturday. It's nice well-wishing there. People behaving themselves nicely. That's nice. BW posted a lot. Very active. Antonio Gates Jr. will add to the underclassmen mix. White's coming back would be good, too, he says. Jesse Adams says, does Barrow have to sit out the first half Saturday? Second question, am I crazy to think we will see a little bit of Naylor at all on Saturday? Yeah, I don't think we're going to see Naylor. I think Barrow, I think missing the first half of that last game counts. YT Sparty says Barrow will not have to sit. Not sure why he didn't play at all against Maryland. Copy that. Gordon Tenona says, this reminds me of the 1980 Olympic hockey team. Tied Sweden, lost to Purdue, same thing. Nobody thought we could beat the Soviet Union. Same thing with Ohio State. 2 days later, USA beat Finland for the gold. So I guess that would make Penn State Finland. Talking about backup quarterbacks now. You were looking at the back of the notebook I had on? Yeah, I probably had some fractions. I don't know. You guys. All right. I'm not going to be able to get to all of these. But I appreciate all these posts. It's getting toward midnight. We're going to have to wrap it up. I got to watch some more Nebraska film. I got a couple articles I want to write also from today's press conference. I got to pack and get ready for Indiana. So that's going to do it. We appreciate all the support we had here tonight. Appreciate all the people. Appreciate the people that tuned in. And also Ron Armstrong, I want to say thanks to him. Thanks to the callers also. And looks like, did my phone number come down? Oh, when I changed to the Ricks thing, the phone number came down. My bad. All right, anyway, everybody have a great weekend. If you're going down to Columbus, be safe, be good. Thanks for chiming in. We'll see you next time.